like to talk to you about a fresh start.
Myself, I can pass any test a man can pass. All I ever
On a new world.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are not in Kansas anymore. You are
wanted was a single thing worth fighting for.
on Pandora. We have an indigenous population called the Na'vi.
You should see your faces.
They are very hard to kill.
Little gray rock sells for 20 million a kilo. Their village happens to be resting on the richest. This is why we're here. Because this deposit, and they need to relocate. Those savages are threatening our whole operation. We're on the brink of war, and you're supposed to be finding a diplomatic solution.
Remotely controlled bodies, called avatars. They're grown from human DNA, mixed with...
You get me what I need, I'll see to it you get your legs back. Your real legs.
Hell yeah, sir.
Looks like you. This is your avatar.
It shouldn't be hard for you.
Jake, it's real simple. I want you to learn from the inside. I want you to gain their trust.
Outstanding.
Go back.
Lost in the woods, have you?
Did you forget what team you're playing for?
Changed. Jake, it's... Strong prey on the weak, and nobody does it.
You knew this would happen?
Everything's and arrows.
Well, I guess we better...
Crazy here. Quaritch is rolling and there's no stopping him.
We're going up against gunships with both.
They've sent us a message that they can take whatever they want. But we will send them a message that this is our land.
mscinemafilmreviews Otkar Rahi Hain James Cameron Key 2009 Key Blockbuster Movie Avatar Kia Ekisi Film Disney Surf Box Office Records High Not Itode, Balke Cinema Key History High Change Cardi Pandora Key Kubsurat Dunia, Navi Culture, Groundbreaking VFX, Our Movie Hidden Facts Ni Audiences Coherent Cardia, is Review Our Facts Video Mine App Change Kavatar Canapin Time Say Ni the. Conse scenes ni technology co-redefine Kia, wo interesting secrets Josha iadap ni pehel kabi notice high knock high honorable eths negation ethio. Avatar is an American epic science fiction franchise created by James Cameron, which began with the movie Avatar released in 2009. The film was produced by Lightstorm Entertainment and released by 20th Century Studios. Over time, the franchise expanded beyond movies and now also includes merchandise, video games, and theme park attractions. The story of Avatar takes place in the mid-22nd century on Pandora, a beautiful and lush moon that orbits a giant planet in the Alpha Centauri star system. At the heart of the films is a conflict between the native people of Pandora, known as the Na'vi led by Jake Sully and Nateria, and the humans, who are led by Colonel Miles Quaritch. The humans work for a powerful corporation called the Resources Development Administration, RDA, which comes to Pandora to take over the land and exploit its valuable natural resources. The title Avatar refers to special genetically created Na'vi bodies that humans can control remotely using advanced brain-computer technology, allowing them to interact with the Na'vi world. The first movie, Avatar, was released on December 18, 2009, and became the highest-grossing film of all time when ticket inflation is not counted. Just 1 week before the movie was released in theaters, 20th Century Fox announced plans for a sequel series. The studio officially confirmed the continuation of the franchise in January 2010. The second film, Avatar: The Way of Water, was released on December 16, 2022. The third movie, titled Fire and Ash, was released on December 19, 2025. Like the original movie, each of the 4 sequels is designed to have its own complete and independent story with a clear ending. At the same time, All the films are connected through a larger overall storyline that ties them together into one big saga. James Cameron has explained that the sequels are a natural continuation of the themes, characters, and spiritual ideas introduced in the first film. The Avatar franchise is one of the most expensive movie franchises ever made, with the total budget of the first film and its 4 sequels estimated to be around $1 billion. Altogether, the franchise has earned more than $6 billion worldwide, making it one of the highest-grossing film series in cinema history. Avatar was written and directed by James Cameron and released in 2009. The film stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana +A, Sigourney Weaver, Michelle Rodriguez, Stephen Lang, Joel David Moore, Giovanni Ribisi, CCH Pounder, Dali Prowl, Matt Gerald, Laz Alonso, and Wes Studi. The story is set in the year 2154. The film tells the story of a large-scale conflict on Pandora, a living, Earth-sized moon that orbits Polyphemus, one of 3 gas giants in the Alpha Centauri star system. On Pandora, human settlers clash with the native intelligent humanoid species called the Na'vi. The humans want to mine valuable natural resources, especially a rare mineral called unobtainium, even if it threatens the survival of the Na'vi. The title Avatar comes from the genetically engineered Na'vi bodies that humans remotely control to communicate and move among the native people. The main character, Jake Sully, is a young paraplegic man who travels from Earth to Pandora. Working for the Powerful Resources Development Administration, RDA, he uses an avatar body and becomes close to Neytiri, a Na'vi woman, and her clan, the Omatikea. Avatar, The Way of Water was also written and directed by James Cameron. The cast includes Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana +A, Joel David Moore, Sigourney Weaver, CCH Pounder, Stephen Lang, Giovanni Ribisi, Kate Winslet, Cliff Curtis, Trinity Bliss, Jamie Flatters, Britton Dalton, and Jack Champion. The film is set 16 years after the first movie, in the year 2170. The story focuses on the return of the RDA to Pandora, which forces Jake Sully and his family to leave their home and seek safety in the ocean regions of the planet. There, they live with water-based Na'vi clans while trying to protect each other from new threats. James Cameron explained that while the first Avatar film focused on visual wonder and discovery, this sequel places greater emphasis on characters and family relationships. The movie was first planned for release in December 2014 but was delayed several times. Filming began in August 2017 and ended in September 2020, with the final release taking place on December 16, 2022. Avatar, Fire and Ash was written and directed by James Cameron and features many returning cast members, including Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana +A, Joel David Moore, Sigourney Weaver, CCH Pounder, Stephen Lang, Giovanni Ribisi, Kate Winslet, Cliff Curtis, Trinity Bliss, Britton Dalton, Jack Champion, David Thewlis, and Una Chaplin. The story is set 1 year after The Way of Water, in the year 2171. This film continues the war between the Na'vi and the RDA, with Jake's family trying to stop further loss of life. A new threat emerges as the RDA gains support from the Mangku clan, a Na'vi group that lives in Pandora's volcanic regions. The movie introduces a new and more aggressive Na'vi tribe known as the Ash People, who live near active volcanoes. Early interviews suggested the third film would explore more of the Alpha Centauri system, though the script was completed several years later. Filming took place alongside The Way of Water in New Zealand, starting in September 2017 and finishing in December 2020. After multiple delays, the film was officially released on December 19, 2025. A fourth Avatar film is planned for release on December 21, 2029. Producer John Landau revealed that because the story includes a 6-year time jump early in the movie, about 1/3 of the film has already been shot to properly capture the aging of the younger actors. James Cameron has confirmed that main filming for Avatar 4 has begun, but the remaining production will continue only after the release of Avatar, Fire and Ash. A fifth Avatar movie has also been announced and is scheduled for release on December 19, 2031. John Landau shared that part of this film will take place on Earth, with Neytiri revisiting the human home planet. James Cameron has mentioned that Avatar: The Quest for Iwa is being considered as a possible title for the fifth installment. The casting process for James Cameron's 2009 film Avatar represented a meticulous and innovative endeavor, blending traditional auditions with groundbreaking performance capture technology. Directed by Cameron, who also wrote the screenplay, the film required actors capable of conveying deep emotion through motion capture suits, facial dots, and virtual environments. Casting director Marjorie Simpkin played a pivotal role in selecting talent that could embody both human characters and the towering, blue-skinned Na'vi natives of Pandora. Simpkin noted that auditions for Na'vi or Avatar roles often revealed whether actors relied on physical props, emphasizing the need for raw, unadorned expressiveness in a technology-heavy production. At the heart of the film stands Sam Worthington as Jake Sully, the paraplegic Marine who becomes an Avatar driver and ultimately aligns with a Na'vi. Worthington, an Australian actor previously known for roles in films like Somersault, was a relative unknown internationally when cast. At the time of his audition, he was living in his car, having sold most possessions amid financial struggles. Cameron sought a fresh face for Jake, avoiding established stars to allow the visual effects to dominate while ensuring authentic vulnerability. Several high-profile actors were considered or offered the role, including Matt Damon, to whom Cameron reportedly proposed a percentage of profits, Chris Pratt, Chris Pine, and Channing Tatum. Damon declined due to commitments on the Bourne Ultimatum, while others like Pratt and Pine felt their auditions fell short. Worthington secured the part through persistence and a bold audition momentum. He spat gum at the camera, capturing Jake's rebellious spirit. Cameron valued Worthington's raw intensity and everyman quality, qualities that translated effectively in motion capture. Worthington's performance as Jake evolves from cynical soldier to immersed Na'vi leader, relying heavily on physicality since much of the role involved portraying mobility in the Avatar body after human paralysis. Opposite Worthington, Zoe Saldana +A portrays Neytiri, the fierce Na'vi warrior and daughter of the Omaticaya clan's spiritual leader. Saldana +A, then emerging from roles in Star Trek and earlier films like Crossroads, was selected after an extensive worldwide search. Early script drafts named the characters Yulika, and in the 1990s development phase, Charisma Carpenter was attached, but age factors intervened by 2006. Actresses like Corianka Kilcher were considered, and Emily Blunt auditioned. Saldana as audition process proved surreal. She performed cartwheels, rolled her R's to mimic the Na'vi language, and submitted tapes before flying to Los Angeles. There, she met Cameron amid props from his past films and saw a sculpture of Neytiri modeled after her likeness. Saldana A assisted in screen testing potential Jakes, including Worthington. Their first meeting occurred in a hotel bar, echoing Jake's bar rejection in the script. Her casting emphasized athleticism, emotional depth, and the ability to convey grace in performance capture. Neytiri demands a wide range: hunter prowess, romantic tenderness, and warrior ferocity. Saldana A as motion capture work captured subtle facial expressions, translating into the alien features seamlessly. Sigourney Weaver joins as Dr. Grace Augustine, the xenobotanist heading the Avatar program. Weaver's reunion with Cameron 2 decades after Aliens brought familiarity and gravitas. Her character serves as mentor to Jake, blending scientific passion with advocacy for the Na'vi. Weaver's casting felt natural given her history portraying strong, intelligent women in Cameron's worlds. Stephen Lang embodies Colonel Miles Quaritch, the antagonistic security chief loyal to the Resources Development Administration. RDA. Lang's imposing presence and military bearing made him ideal for the unyielding villain, delivering over-the-top menace that contrasts the film's ecological themes. Michelle Rodriguez plays Trudy Chak-A-Cubeden, the defiant pilot who defects to aid the Na'vi. Simpkin praised Rodriguez's hard-working nature and toughness, traits aligning with her prior action roles. Trudy provides aerial support and moral counterpoint to corporate greed. Giovanni Ribisi portrays Parker Selfridge, the corporate administrator overseeing unobtainium mining. Ribisi's casting added sleazy ambition, clashing with Quaritch's militarism and Grace's idealism. Supporting human roles include Joel David Moore's Norm Spellman, the enthusiastic scientist and avatar driver. Simkin highlighted Moore's comic relief, injecting humor into tense sequences. On the Navi side, CCH Pounder voices Ma'at, Neytiri's mother and the cleansed Tilde negation K, spiritual leader. Pounder's classy delivery lent authority and wisdom. Wes Studi plays Idukn, the clan chief and Neytiri's father, bringing veteran gravitas from indigenous roles. Laz Alonso portrays Tsidi, the skilled warrior betrothed to Neytiri, whose arc involves rivalry and sacrifice. Dilip Rao appears as Dr. Max Patel, the supportive scientist managing Link operations. Additional cast members flesh out the world. Matt Gerald is Corporal Lyle Wainfleet, Quaritch's loyal subordinate Cliff Curtis, initially listed in some credits as Parker Selfridge, though Ribisi held the role, and numerous uncredited or supporting performers like Peter Mensah as an Avi Horseman. Voice and motion capture extended to stunt performers and extras, with actors like Alicia Vela-Bailey contributing to action sequences. Cameron prioritized actors comfortable with the demanding process. Weeks in motion capture shoots on volume stages, followed by live-action shoots in Hawaii for rainforest authenticity. The cast trained in archery, horseback riding, and Navi language, physicality to ensure fluidity. Performance capture allowed real-time virtual direction, with Cameron using a handheld camera to frame digital characters. Many actors described the experience as transformative. Worthington noted the fearlessness required, while Salda A+A called working with Cameron a once-in-lifetime opportunity. Weaver appreciated revisiting sci-fi roots. Lang embraced the villainy, drawing on military archetypes. The ensemble mixed emerging talents like Worthington and Salda A+A alongside veterans like Weaver and Lang created balance. Newcomers brought freshness to Pandora's wonders, while experienced performers grounded human conflicts. Casting decisions influenced the film's immersive quality. Subtle distinctions like five-fingered avatars versus four-fingered Navi required precise performer choices. Simkin's approach focused on emotional truth over star power, allowing effects to enhance rather than overshadow performances. Behind-the-scenes anecdotes highlight the process's intensity. Worthington's gum-spitting audition captured Jake's attitude. Salda A+A's early involvement in chemistry reads ensured strong Jake-Neytiri pairing. Ultimately, the cast's commitment to Cameron's vision emerging acting with technology elevated the epic. Their performances, captured through dots and suits, breathed life into Pandora's inhabitants, making human Navi conflicts resonate. Worthington's journey from homelessness to blockbuster lead underscores discovery themes. Salda A+as Neytiri became iconic, blending strength and vulnerability. Supporting players like Rodriguez and Ribisi added layers. Trudy's redemption arc and Selfridge's corporate detachment. Moore's Norm provided levity amid spectacle. Navi cast Pounder, Studi, Alonso infused cultural authenticity, drawing on indigenous-inspired elements. The full principal lineup of Worthington, Salda A+A, Weaver, Lang, Rodriguez, Ribisi, Moore, Pounder, Alonso, Rao, Studi formed a cohesive unit, navigating unprecedented production. Extended credits reveal hundreds involved in motion capture, stunts, and voices, including Terry Notary as Banshee performers and TJ Storm in mech suits. This casting assemblage, selected for adaptability and depth, proved instrumental in realizing Cameron's ambitious world. Actors transcended physical forms, delivering nuanced portrayals that anchored visual extravagance. Worthington's Jake anchors the narrative shift from exploitation to harmony. Salda A+as Neytiri embodies Pandora's spirit. Weaver's Grace bridges worlds. Lang's Quaritch personifies threat. Each choice reflected Cameron's preference for collaborators pushing boundaries, favoring lesser-knowns for leads to emphasize story and effects. The process, spanning years with global searches and tech-integrated auditions, set precedents for franchise sequels. Performers' dedication at training in Hawaiian jungles, mastering invented language, enduring capture rigs to forge believable inhabitants. Salda A++ is long-term commitment, spanning decades, highlights role rarity. Worthington's evolution mirrors Jake's. Veterans like Weaver and Studi elevated material with subtlety. Rodriguez's pilot injected adrenaline. Ribisi's administrator satirized greed. Moore's scientist offered relatability. Rao's Patel supported logistics. Alonso's Studi added tragic nobility. This diverse, talented group coalesced under Cameron and Simkin, creating enduring performances in cinematic history. Avatar, 2009. Production, release, and reception. Production development and pre-production. The journey of Avatar began long before cameras started rolling, rooted in James Cameron's imagination from his teenage years. Cameron experienced a bioluminescent forest in a dream, which inspired him to create a beautiful alien world. His mother also had a dream about tall blue people, which influenced the eventual look of the Na'vi, though early concept art of Neytiri was inspired by actress and activist Koryanka Kilcher from the film The New World. Development officially began in 1994 when Cameron wrote an 80-page treatment for the film. He originally wanted to make Avatar in the 1990s and had a version of the script written called Project 880. However, Cameron recognized that the realism and technology of computer-generated imagery were too limited at the time. The director made a crucial decision to put the project on hold for a decade, waiting for technology to catch up with his vision. The film was initially supposed to take place after completing Cameron's 1997 film Titanic for a planned 1999 release, but the necessary technology simply wasn't ready. Work on the fictional constructed language of the Na'vi began in 2005, with linguist Paul Frommer developing a complete language system inspired by Polynesian languages. The language features unique grammar elements such as verb serialization and a vigesimal number system. Over 2,000 words were created for dialogue and lore in the film, and the cast underwent intensive language training to prepare for their roles. Cameron began developing the screenplay and fictional universe in early 2006, working meticulously to create a complete ecosystem for Pandora. The film was designed to be a mainstream movie about environmentalism and the idea of different cultures working together for the greater good, while also showing the detrimental effects of human greed and corporatism. Cameron did not originally intend for Avatar to have any sequels and wrote it as a standalone film. In July 2006, Cameron announced that he would film Avatar for a mid-2008 release and planned to begin principal photography with an established cast by February 2007. The following August, visual effects studio Weta Digital signed on to help Cameron produce Avatar, marking the beginning of a collaboration that would revolutionize visual effects. Stan Winston, who had collaborated with Cameron on previous films, joined Avatar to help with the film's designs before his passing. From 2005 to 2007, Cameron worked with a handful of designers to shape the design of the Na'vi. He collaborated with famed fantasy illustrator Wayne Barlow and renowned concept artist Jordu Skell, creating paintings and physical sculptures when Cameron felt that 3D brush renderings were not capturing his vision. These sessions often took place in the kitchen of Cameron's Malibu home, demonstrating the director's hands-on approach to every aspect of the film's creation. Production design for the film took several years and involved 2 different production designers and 2 separate art departments. One department focused specifically on the flora and fauna of Pandora, while another created human machines and human factors. This separation allowed for specialized attention to the drastically different aesthetic worlds that would collide in the film. Digital cinematographer Dylan Cole, who served as the concept art director, played a critical role in bringing Avatar's visuals to life. He created over 200 pieces of artwork for the movie, drawing inspiration from a range of sources to create a sense of realism within the science fiction elements. Cole studied the scenery of different regions of China, particularly the karst-slime landscapes of Guilin and Zhangjiajie, as well as the jungles of South America, including the Tepuy and Angel Falls in Venezuela. This research helped him design unique landscapes such as the Hallelujah Mountains, with their jagged peaks, magnetic rings, and hovering rocks. Cole also designed the alien plants, taking inspiration from lichens, succulents, and other exotic flowers and plants, which he enlarged 20-50 times to create a truly otherworldly feel. Cameron reunited with his Titanic co-producer John Landau for Avatar, whom he would later credit as having a prominent role in the film's production. Cameron eventually stated that it was John Landau who was the heart of the Avatar family and the center of gravity of our little bubble universe. Landau had joined Cameron's company Lightstorm Entertainment in 1993 during the production of True Lies and became an essential partner in bringing Avatar to life. Avatar was officially budgeted at $237 million due to the groundbreaking array of new visual effects Cameron achieved in cooperation with Weta Digital in Wellington. However, other estimates put the cost at between $280 million and $310 million for production, with an additional $150 million allocated for promotion. This made Avatar one of the most expensive films ever produced at the time. A number of innovative visual effects techniques were developed during pre-production. According to Cameron, work on the film had been delayed since the 1990s to allow the techniques to reach the necessary degree of advancement to adequately portray his vision. The director planned to make use of photorealistic computer-generated characters created using new motion capture animation technologies he had been developing in the 14 months leading up to December 2006. Key innovations included a new system for lighting massive areas like Pandora's jungle, a motion capture stage or volume 6 times larger than any previously used, and an improved method of capturing facial expressions that enabled full performance capture. Cameron wanted to capture 100% of an actor's performance with computers and then animate the world around them, allowing for much more natural performances than traditional methods that relied on rubber makeup and prosthetics. The development of the Fusion camera system became a cornerstone of the production. Beginning in 2000, Sony agreed to help Cameron build his Holy Grail camera system. Over the next few years, he developed a lightweight, dual-lens, high-definition digital camera capable of shooting precisely calibrated 3D images that wouldn't give viewers a headache. The Fusion camera system used stereoscopic lenses, two separate lenses on the same horizontal plane to mimic the vision of two human eyes. This revolutionary system would be used to film Avatar's live-action sequences. Cameron's virtual camera system represented another breakthrough. Animation director Richie Bainham and virtual production supervisor Glenn Derry created a real-time pre-visualization system that let Cameron direct performance capture shots while viewing on-the-fly composites of the final scene. The virtual camera was essentially an LCD screen that shows the actors as 10-foot-tall aliens inhabiting Pandora's lush environment, allowing Cameron to position performers in direct action while seeing a real-time simulation of the finished product. To manage the vast amount of data needed for the project, Microsoft created a new cloud computing and digital asset management system called Gaia. This system allowed the crew to track and coordinate all phases of digital processing in real time, representing a significant advancement in how large-scale visual effects productions could be managed. Filming motion capture photography lasted 31 days at the Hughes Aircraft Stage in Playa Vista, Los Angeles. This soundstage became the primary location for capturing the performances that would later be transformed into the Na'vi characters. The motion capture stage was 6 times larger than any previously used, giving actors unprecedented freedom of movement and allowing Cameron to direct scenes with a level of spontaneity rarely possible in effects-heavy productions. Cameron's approach to filming motion capture was revolutionary, using a handheld controller similar to those used in video games and a monitor that showed the motion capture actors in their pre-rendered animated states. The team had full control over the scale and motion of the virtual camera. By switching the scale, the camera could tower over the digital figures as if atop a 100-foot crane. The controller could also operate the camera as if it were on dolly tracks, a Steadicam rig, or even handheld, providing total cinematic control over the digital image. The director indicated that he had already worked 4 months on non-principal scenes for the film before official production began. This preparation time allowed Cameron to refine the techniques and workflows that would be essential for the main shoot. Live-action photography began in October 2007 at Stone Street Studios in Wellington, New Zealand, and was scheduled to last 31 days. The complex comprises New Zealand's only purpose-built shooting stages, an extensive warehouse, a production office, and makeup amenities. More than 1,000 people worked on the production, representing one of the largest crew assemblies in film history. The live action was shot with a modified version of the proprietary digital 3D fusion camera system developed by Cameron and Vince Pace. In January 2007, Fox announced that 3D filming for Avatar would be done at 24 frames per second, despite Cameron's strong opinion that a 3D film requires a higher frame rate to make strobing less noticeable. This represented a compromise between technical idealism and practical considerations. According to Cameron, the film is composed of 60% computer-generated elements and 40% live-action and traditional miniatures. This blend required careful coordination between the live-action shoots and the performance capture sessions. Despite these major technical innovations, Avatar still had to rely on traditional filmmaking methods to be a fully realized movie, and the live-action shooting, while a smaller proportion of the production, was key as the foundation for the motion capture and digital creations. Cinematographer Mauro Fiore faced unique challenges in merging Avatar's digital effects with its live action. He realized early in the production that he could use reflective paint and reflective material on certain objects that would react to UV light in a way that differentiated them in post-production, allowing the green screen around them to feel invisible. A green screen was a prominent part of Avatar's shoot, with even the ceiling of many sets using green screen, making it impossible for Fiore and his team to hide their lights. To work around this problem, Fiore cut stripes of green screen and hung them from the ceiling like curtains, effectively hiding the lights. Prior to shooting, Cameron sent his cast to explore Hawaiian tropical rainforests, giving them an authentic taste of what they'd be recreating on set. The cast underwent specific character training to help them best depict their roles, including archery, horseback riding, firearm use, hand-to-hand combat, and dialect training in the Na'vi language custom created for the movie. This immersive preparation helped the actors inhabit their roles more fully and understand the physical reality of the world they were creating. Filming locations included various sites in Hawaii, including Kauai, the Hamakua Coast, and Oahu. These lush tropical locations provided inspiration and reference material for the digitally created environments of Pandora. The Hamakua Coast, set on the northeastern side of Hawaii's Big Island, features cascading waterfalls including the 442-foot high Circumflexikaka Falls and the 100-foot tall Kahuna Falls, which influenced the design of Pandora's dramatic landscapes. After performances were captured, Cameron would return to the soundstage, now empty of actors. Technicians would cue up the performances one by one as Cameron used his virtual camera to choreograph camera moves, tracking shots, dolly shots, crane shots, and pans. The movements were tracked by the same system that recorded the actors, and Cameron's work was then incorporated into the rendering system so his every directing decision was reflected in the finished product. Post-production. The post-production phase of Avatar was massive in scope and pushed the boundaries of what was possible in visual effects. The behind-the-scenes visual effects were mainly done by Weta Digital, now known as Weta FX, and Industrial Light Magic. Around two-thirds of the shots in the movie featured computer-generated elements, and even many of the props used in live-action scenes needed to be added to the special effects in post-production. At its peak, Weta Digital had about 900 people involved in creating Avatar's visual effects. The scale and complexity of the work required unprecedented coordination and data management. It would often take the computer several hours to render a single frame of the film, with one estimate suggesting approximately 100 hours of computer time to animate each frame, though this may have been conservative. At the scene complexity level, one shot in Avatar was the equivalent in man-hours and computing power to entire sequences for other films. To help finish preparing the special effects sequences on time, a number of other companies were brought on board, including Industrial Light Magic, which worked alongside Weta Digital to create the battle sequences. ILM was responsible for the visual effects for many of the film's specialized vehicles and devised a new way to make computer-generated explosions. For the explosive scenes in the movie, Cameron required an exact match template, and for the explosions to interact with other computer-generated objects, the best solution was to create the explosions using full computer graphics. with fluid simulations and gas expansion volume and temperature properties added to create a more realistic effect. Frames Tour was honored to be the only UK facility awarded shots on James Cameron's Avatar. The company conducted extensive research and development on early 2009, which included the purchase of necessary 3D-oriented equipment such as the Ocula plugin for their new compositing software, true 3D monitors for workstations, and the installation of a RELD cinema projection system at Frames Tour's cinema. The technical research ensured that Frames Tour's Avatar team would be prepared for the unique demands of the project. Because large sections of the film are essentially a photorealistic computer-generated movie, the level of detail on the models and textures was phenomenal. The cargo bay built for the Valkyrie, the huge transport craft that delivers Jake Sully to Hell's Gate, had 360 pages of texture maps. To provide perspective, a hero creature from another film might typically have 3 or 4 pages of texture maps. In the end, just to render that model, there were about 1,800 various texture maps, and when you consider that it's just one component of one ship in a shot that's 90% computer generated, it gives some sense of the vast scale of this project. The lack of appropriate painting tools led Weta Digital to create Mari, their own 3D painting software. The development was driven by the texture department's requirement to handle massively complex, highly detailed look development work demanded on Avatar. Almost every asset rendered by Weta for Avatar was painted to some extent in Mari. A typical character was around 150 to 170 patches, with 30 or more channels including specular, diffuse, and subsurface properties, and 500,000 polygons at subdivision level 1. At full capacity, the project required up to 54 artists painting the 2.5 million textures required for the models. Lead texture artists David Abbott and Michael Cox described the challenges of painting objects that were essentially sets that would be seen from very close up at multiple angles, in a variety of positions, and even interacting with characters, which required a lot of high-resolution texture maps and geometry. Textures played a critical role in creating a rich and varied set of assets. Using texture variations, the team was able to create 68 unique creatures from 23 hero models. For the Banshees, there was only one hero geometry built, but there were 26 texture variants. Then there were the plants. 483 hero plant assets were built, but with geometry modifications and different textures, that translated into 3,000 possible variations. During production, the crew built 25 sets covering 40,000 square feet of buildings and 10,000 square feet of other structures. The attention to detail extended to every aspect of the fictional world, from the smallest plant to the largest vehicle. Joe Lettery served as the film's visual effects general supervisor, coordinating the work of multiple facilities and ensuring that Cameron's vision was realized on screen. The groundbreaking techniques developed for Avatar, including real-time performance capture, facial rigging, 3D animation, and compositing, shows that computer-generated filmmaking had reached the point where it could carry the story and maintain suspension of disbelief through an entire movie. The film was originally set for release on May 22, 2009, during filming, but was pushed back to allow more post-production time. The last shots were delivered in November 2009, just weeks before the film's premiere. This extended post-production period, while delaying the release, gave more time for theaters worldwide to install 3D projectors, which would prove crucial to the film's success. Cameron stated that the film's aspect ratio would be 1.78 to 1 for 3D screenings and that a 2.39 to 1 image would be extracted for 2D screenings. However, a 3D 2.39 to 1 extract was also approved for use with constant image height screens, providing flexibility for different theater configurations. Music composer James Horner scored the film, marking his third collaboration with Cameron after Aliens and Titanic. Horner's involvement in Avatar represented one of the most intensive scoring processes of his career. He recorded parts of the score with a small chorus singing in the alien language Na'vi in March 2008, helping to create an authentic sonic landscape for Pandora. Horner also worked with Wanda Bryant, an ethnomusicologist, to create a music culture for the alien race. This collaboration ensured that the music felt organic to the world of the Na'vi rather than simply being applied to it. The first scoring sessions were planned to take place in early 2009, though Horner had been developing themes and motifs for the film well before then. During production, Horner promised Cameron that he would not work on any other project except for Avatar and reportedly worked on the score from 4 in the morning until 10 at night throughout the process. This level of dedication was necessary given the scope and complexity of the project. Horner stated in an interview that Avatar had been the most difficult film he had worked on and the biggest job he had undertaken. Horner's approach to composing the score was unique and ambitious. He composed the score as two different scores merged into one. He first created a score that reflected the Na'vi way of sound, incorporating instruments and musical styles that would feel indigenous to Pandora. He then combined it with a separate traditional score using familiar orchestral elements to drive the film. This dual approach created a sonic landscape that could shift between the human and Na'vi perspectives while maintaining a cohesive musical identity. The Avatar soundtrack, officially titled Avatar, Music from the Motion Picture, was released on December 15, 2009. By Atlantic Records and Fox Music. The score received critical acclaim for its sweeping orchestral themes and innovative use of ethnic instruments and vocalizations. Horner's work helped establish the emotional landscape of Pandora and became an integral part of the Avatar experience. Released theatrical Avatar premiered at the Odeon Leicester Square Inches, London on December 10, 2009. Marking the beginning of what would become a cinematic phenomenon. The film was released theatrically worldwide from December 16 to 18, with the United States release on December 18, 2009. The staggered international release strategy allowed the film to build momentum across global markets. The film made extensive use of new motion capture filming techniques and was released for traditional viewing, 3D viewing using multiple formats, RELD 3D, Dolby 3D, Span 3D, and IMAX 3D formats, and even 4D experiences in selected South Korean theaters. This variety of viewing options was unprecedented and represented a significant gamble on the appeal of premium formats. Stereoscopic filmmaking was touted as a breakthrough in cinematic technology. Cameron had been a vocal advocate for 3D as a storytelling medium rather than just a gimmick, and Avatar was designed from the ground up to showcase what could be achieved with the format. The film's success would vindicate this approach and trigger a wave of 3D releases from other studios. During a 3D preview showing in Germany on December 16, the movie's DRM protection system malfunctioned, and some copies delivered weren't watched at all in the theaters. The problems were fixed in time for the public premiere, but the incident highlighted the technical challenges of distributing a film in so many different formats simultaneously. Marketing the film as a cinematic event that should be seen in theaters proved to be a highly effective strategy. Fox positioned Avatar as something that couldn't be replicated at home, emphasizing the immersive 3D experience and the scale of IMAX presentations. As analyst David Mumpower stated, "It's really hard to sell the idea that you can have the same experience at home. And this positioning drove audiences to theaters in unprecedented numbers." Avatar opened in 106 markets globally and was #1 in all of them. The film tracked similarly to Titanic in terms of international performance, with 2/3 of its total haul earned overseas. Markets such as Russia, where Titanic saw modest receipts in 1997 and 1998, were white hot for Avatar, with more screens and moviegoers than before. Not only did some theaters charge up to $18.50 for IMAX tickets, but the buzz created by the new technology was a possible cause for sold-out screenings. According to industry analysts, films in 3D accumulated $1.3 billion in 2009, a threefold increase over 2008 and more than 10% of the total 2009 box office gross, demonstrating the significant impact Avatar had on the adoption of 3D technology. Box office analyst Phil Condrino noted at the time that Avatar benefited from a relative lack of strong competition during its release window. The film's December release positioned it perfectly for the holiday season, when audiences have more time to see movies and are looking for big cinematic experiences to share with family and friends. The film remained at #1 at the domestic box office for 7 consecutive weeks, the most consecutive #1 weekends since Titanic spent 15 weekends at #1 in 1997 and 1998. Avatar also spent 11 consecutive weekends at the top of the box office outside the United States and Canada, breaking the record of 9 consecutive weekends set by Pirates of the Caribbean: Dead Man's Chest. Avatar was re-released in theaters on September 23, 2022, by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures for a limited 2-week engagement. The film was remastered in 4K high dynamic range, with select scenes at a high frame rate of 48 FPS. The reissue was positioned prior to the December 2022 premiere of its sequel, Avatar: The Way of Water, allowing new audiences to experience the original film and longtime fans to revisit Pandora on the big screen. Home Media 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment released the film on DVD and Blu-ray in the United States on April 22, 2010, and in the United Kingdom on April 26. The United States release was strategically timed for Earth Day rather than the traditional Tuesday release date, allowing Avatar to be tied to a major marketing initiative that underscored the environmental themes in the movie. Director James Cameron and producer John Landau appeared at a media event in Los Angeles to kick off the marketing effort. Both the DVD and Blu-ray of the first release contained the standard 2D theatrical version of the movie only, with no 3D version included. The movie was shot using digital cameras in a native capture ratio of 16:9. Although Cameron has long been a fan of CinemaScope 2.35:1 projection ratio and composed Avatar to be safe formatting to this ratio, the movie was presented in this first release in a fully open matte 16:9, 1.78:1. transfer. This first edition was released worldwide between April 21 and May 5, 2010. The decision to release the film without supplemental features was controversial but strategic. Cameron and the studio wanted to make space for optimal video quality and planned to release a more comprehensive edition later that would include extensive bonus materials and alternate cuts of the film. The Blu-ray disc integrated a new kind of BD Plus encryption system, mentioned to be called BD Plus 5, which caused slower disc load times and compatibility issues for some users. A number of users reported compatibility issues as they were not able to play the disc on standalone Blu-ray players from Samsung, LG, Sharp, Den, and other manufacturers' models. These players required new firmware updates to play the disc properly. Problems with the new copy protection system were also reported when using desktop applications like Total Media Theater 3 or certain versions of Power DVD. Despite these technical issues, Avatar set a first-day launch record in the United States for Blu-ray sales at 1.5 million units sold, breaking the record previously held by The Dark Knight. 600,000 units sold. First-day DVD and Blu-ray sales combined were over 4 million units sold, demonstrating the pent-up demand for the home video release. In its first 4 days of release, sales of Avatar on Blu-ray reached 2.7 million in the United States and Canada, overtaking The Dark Knight to become the best ever selling Blu-ray release in the region. The release later broke the Blu-ray sales record in the United Kingdom the following week. In its first 3 weeks of release, the film sold a total of 19.7 million DVD and Blu-ray discs combined, setting a new record for sales in that period. As of July 18, 2012, DVD sales, not including Blu-ray, totaled over 10.5 million units sold with $190,806,055 in revenue. Avatar retained its record as the top-selling Blu-ray in the US market until January 2015, when it was surpassed by Disney's Frozen, demonstrating the longevity of the film's home video appeal. The Avatar 3-disc extended collector's edition on DVD and Blu-ray was released on November 16, 2010. 3 different versions of the film were present on the discs: the original theatrical cut, 162 minutes, the special edition cut, 170 minutes, and a collector's extended cut, 178 minutes. The DVD set spread the film across 2 discs, while the Blu-ray set presented it on a single disc. The collector's extended cut contained 8 more minutes of footage, thus making it 16 minutes longer than the original theatrical cut. Cameron mentioned that viewers could sit down and, in a continuous screening of the film, watch it with the Earth opening, An additional 4.5 minutes of scenes that were in the film for much of its production but were ultimately cut before the film's theatrical release. The release also included an additional 45 minutes of deleted scenes and other extensive bonus materials. Cameron initially stated that Avatar would be released in 3D around November 2010, but the studio issued a correction stating that 3D was in the conceptual stage and Avatar would not be released on 3D Blu-ray in November. In May 2010, Fox stated that the 3D version would be released sometime in 2011. It was later revealed that Fox had given Panasonic an exclusive license for the 3D Blu-ray version, and only with the purchase of a Panasonic 3D TV. The length of Panasonic's exclusivity period was stated to last until February 2012. In October 2010, Cameron stated that the standalone 3D Blu-ray would be the final version of the film's home release and that it was maybe 1-2 years out. On Christmas Eve 2010, Avatar had its 3D television world premiere on Sky in the United Kingdom, giving audiences their first opportunity to experience the film in 3D at home. On August 13, 2012, Cameron announced on Facebook that Avatar would be released globally on Blu-ray 3D, and the Blu-ray 3D version was finally released on October 16, 2012, nearly 3 years after the film's theatrical debut. In June 2023, Avatar received a 4K UHD release for the first time, featuring both existing and new bonus features. The 4K UHD edition included Memories from Avatar, where producer John Landau led a spirited conversation with cast members Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, and Stephen Lang, recalling warm memories from production and reflecting on the extraordinary success of the film. The 4K release was timed to coincide with the home video release of Avatar: The Way of Water, allowing fans to experience both films in the highest quality available. Reception box office. Avatar's box office performance was not merely successful, it was a phenomenon that redefined what was possible for a theatrical release. The film opened with approximately $77 million domestically during its opening weekend, a figure that seemed modest compared to other blockbusters of the era. However, what made Avatar extraordinary was not its opening but its unprecedented staying power at the box office. Revenues in the film's second weekend decreased by only 1.8% in domestic markets, marking a rare occurrence and grossing $75,617,183 to remain in first place at the box office, recording what was then the biggest second weekend of all time. The film experienced another marginal decrease in revenue in its third weekend, dropping only 9.4% to $68,490,688 domestically while remaining in first place, setting a third weekend record. This pattern of minimal week-to-week drops demonstrated that Avatar was not just a must-see opening weekend event but a sustained cultural phenomenon. In its fourth weekend, Avatar continued to lead the box office domestically, setting a new all-time fourth weekend record of $50,306,217 and becoming the highest-grossing 2009 release in the United States, beating Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. The film's ability to maintain such strong performance week after week was virtually unprecedented in modern cinema. Avatar crossed the $1 billion mark on the 19th day of its international release, making it the first film to reach this mark in only 19 days. It became the fifth film to gross more than $1 billion worldwide and the only film of 2009 to do so. On January 31, 2010, it became the first film to gross over $2 billion worldwide, reaching this milestone in just 45 days after release. The film became the first to gross over $700 million in the United States and Canada on February 27, 2010, after 72 days of release. By the end of its first theatrical release, Avatar had grossed $749,766,139 in the United States and Canada, and $1,999,298,189 in other territories, for a worldwide total of $2,749,064,328, including the revenue from a re-release of Avatar featuring extended footage. Avatar grossed $785,221,649 in the United States and Canada, and $2,138,484,377 internationally, for a total of $2,923,710,708 globally. Avatar set numerous box office records during its release. On January 25, 2010, it surpassed Titanic's worldwide gross to become the highest-grossing film of all time worldwide, 41 days after its international release, just 2 days after taking the foreign box office record. On February 2, 2010, 47 days after its domestic release, Avatar surpassed Titanic to become the highest-grossing film of all time in Canada and the United States. It became the highest-grossing film of all time in at least 30 other countries and was the first film to gross over $2 billion in foreign box office receipts. IMAX ticket sales accounted for $243.3 million of its worldwide gross initially, more than double the previous record. By 2022, this figure rose to $268.6 million, and ultimately reached $278 million from IMAX screenings worldwide, demonstrating the continued appeal of the premium format experience. Box Office Mojo observed that the higher ticket prices for 3D and IMAX screenings had a significant impact on Avatar's gross. The site estimated on April 21, 2010, that Avatar had sold approximately 75 million tickets in North American theaters, more than any other film since 1999's Star Wars, Episode I: The Phantom Menace. Box office analysts identified several factors contributing to the film's extraordinary success. Among these were the relative lack of competition owing to the release date, with analyst Gray noting that by a certain point, people who were going to see Avatar were going to see Avatar and would even if the slate was strong. The novelty factor of the 3D technology also helped significantly. The Oscar buzz surrounding the film and international viewings helped sustain its box office run. 2/3 of Titanic's haul was earned overseas, and Avatar tracked similarly, with markets such as Russia, where Titanic saw modest receipts in 1997 and 1998, being white-hot for Avatar with more screens and moviegoers than before. In markets like China, Avatar set a debut record with $13.6 million in its opening weekend. China's rapidly growing cinema market played a crucial role in boosting Avatar's global box office, and the film became one of the highest-grossing films in the country's history at the time. The film's performance in China demonstrated the increasing importance of international markets, particularly emerging ones, in determining the success of major blockbusters. Germany's opening weekend in January 2010 yielded approximately $13.1 million, setting a record for science fiction releases and highlighting the film's appeal in Europe. Other notable debuts included Russia with $19.7 million from its December 17 launch, Japan at $14.5 million over the weekend from 749 screens, and Australia with $16.3 million in its early rollout. The Hollywood Reporter estimated that after a combined production and promotion cost of between $387 million and $437 million, the film turned a net profit of $1.2 billion, making it one of the most profitable films in history. This profitability was achieved not just through theatrical release but through a carefully orchestrated strategy of premium format presentations, extended theatrical runs, and strategic re-releases. On a worldwide basis, when Avatar's gross stood at $2 billion just 35 days into its run, the Daily Telegraph estimated its gross was surpassed by only Gone with the Wind, Titanic, and Star Wars after adjusting for inflation to 2010 prices. Reuters even placed it ahead of Titanic after adjusting the global total for inflation, though the 2015 edition of Guinness World Records listed Avatar only behind Gone with the Wind in terms of adjusted grosses worldwide. The 2022 international re-release added $20.5 million in its opening weekend across select markets, boosting global visibility ahead of the sequel. This re-release demonstrated that there was still significant audience interest in experiencing Avatar on the big screen more than a decade after its original release. Avatar's box office success had a lasting impact on the film industry. It demonstrated the viability of premium format presentations and 3D as a driver of box office revenue. It shows that original stories could compete with established franchises. Most importantly, it proved that audience word of mouth and staying power could be more valuable than a massive opening weekend, fundamentally changing how studios thought about release strategies and the life cycle of a theatrical release. Critical response: Avatar received generally positive reviews from critics upon its release, with praise focused primarily on its groundbreaking visual effects and world building, though the narrative received more mixed responses. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an 81% approval rating from critics, making it certified fresh on the platform. The critics' consensus states that while it might be more impressive on a technical level than as a piece of storytelling, Avatar reaffirms James Cameron's singular gift for imaginative, absorbing filmmaking. Critics were nearly unanimous in their praise for the film's visual achievements. Many reviewers noted that the computer-generated world of Pandora was rendered with such detail and care that it felt like a genuine, tangible place. Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times awarded the film 4 stars out of 4, praising it as extraordinary and comparing his viewing experience to seeing Star Wars in 1977. He described Avatar as a technical breakthrough with an environmental and anti-war message that would reward repeated viewings. On Metacritic, Avatar received a score of 83 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating universal acclaim. Audiences surveyed by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an A+2F scale across all demographics. According to polling data, the main attraction that drew audiences to the film was its innovative use of 3D technology. A.O. Scott, also making comparisons to Star Wars, noted that while the script was somewhat obvious, this quality was actually part of what made the film work. Todd McCarthy of Variety praised Cameron for creating a world entirely worth visiting, stating that the director's talent might be as big as his dreams. Richard Corliss of Time called it the most vivid and convincing creation of a fantasy world ever seen in moving pictures. Kenneth Duran of the Los Angeles Times offered a more measured assessment, acknowledging the film's powerful visual accomplishments while criticizing its flat dialogue and obvious characterization. James Berardinelli of ReelViews gave the film 4 out of 4 stars, emphasizing that in 3D it was immersive, but the traditional film elements including story, character, editing, theme, and emotional resonance were presented with sufficient expertise to make even the 2D version engrossing. The narrative structure and story became a focal point for critical discussion. Multiple reviewers drew comparisons between Avatar's plot and other films, particularly Disney's Pocahontas, Kevin Costner's Dances with Wolves, and The Last Samurai. The film follows what critics identified as a man-going native archetype, where an outsider joins an indigenous culture and eventually helps them fight against colonizing forces. This familiar story structure led some to dismiss the film as derivative, with phrases like Pocahontas in space becoming common shorthand for the criticism. NPR's Morning Edition compared the film to a montage of tropes, with commentators noting that Avatar seemed to be made by mixing various film scripts together. Science fiction writer Gary Westphal observed that the story most closely resembling Avatar was Ursula Le Guin's novella The Word for a World is Forest from 1972, which similarly depicted a benevolent alien race living in harmony with nature until attacked by invading human soldiers. Editor Gardner Dozos identified the film as a mashup that also included elements from Alan Dean Foster's 1975 novel Midworld. Visual design also attracted divided opinions. Some critics saw similarities to the artwork of Roger Dean, known for his fantasy illustrations of dragons and floating rock formations that appeared on progressive rock album covers in the 1970s. While many praised the bioluminescent forests and floating mountains, others felt the aesthetic was derivative or overly whimsical. The film's color palette, featuring vibrant blues and glowing elements, drew both praise for its otherworldly beauty and criticism for resembling what one reviewer described as a mixture of Roger Dean album covers and Thomas Kincaid paintings. The film's political themes attracted significant attention and varied responses. Cameron acknowledged that Avatar implicitly criticized the United States' role in the Iraq War and the impersonal nature of mechanized warfare. He noted that Americans know what it feels like to launch missiles but don't know what it feels like for them to land on their home soil. The film's use of the term shock and awe and its depiction of the destruction of the Navy home drew comparisons to real-world military operations and even to the September 11th attacks, with Cameron expressing surprise at how much one scene resembled the fall of the Twin Towers. Armand White of the New York Press criticized Cameron for using villainous American characters to misrepresent facets of militarism, capitalism, and imperialism. Conversely, Adam Cohen of the New York Times viewed the anti-imperialist message more positively, calling it a 22nd century version of historical colonial conflicts. Ross Douthat characterized the film as Cameron's apology for pantheism, noting that pantheism had become Hollywood's religion of choice. Sir the Prabhu countered that the film was a misportrayal of pantheism and Eastern spirituality, while Maximo Sapov commended the film's message for its consistency with Hindu teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. The white savior narrative became another point of contention. Anna Leibovitz of IO9 concluded that Avatar represented another iteration of the recurring fantasy whereby a white character becomes the most accomplished member of a non-white culture. This criticism resonated with broader discussions about representation and cultural appropriation in Hollywood films, with Avatar joining films like The Last Samurai and Dances with Wolves in facing scrutiny for this narrative pattern. Despite these criticisms of the story, many reviewers emphasize that the film's technological achievements and immersive world-building compensated for narrative familiarity. The consensus seemed to be that while Avatar didn't break new ground in storytelling, it represented a genuine revolution in cinematic technology and visual spectacle. The film demonstrated what could be achieved when cutting-edge motion capture, 3D cinematography, and computer-generated imagery were deployed at the highest level. Avatar received numerous accolades from fellow filmmakers. Steven Spielberg called it the most evocative and amazing science fiction movie since Star Wars. Other directors described it as audacious, awe-inspiring, a masterclass, and brilliant. French filmmaker Luc Besson stated that Avatar opened doors for him to create an adaptation of the graphic novel series Valet copyright Tryon and Laureline, revealing that he threw away his original script and completely rewrote it after seeing Cameron's film. However, not all filmmaker responses were positive. Duncan Jones questioned whether audiences ever had any doubt about what would happen next in the film, suggesting the narrative was entirely predictable. Some critics and audience members felt the film was too long, with one 10-year-old reportedly checking his phone repeatedly during a screening to see how much time remained. Time magazine ranked Avatar number 3 on their list of the 10 greatest movies of the millennium, also earning it a spot on the magazine's all-time 100 list. IGN included Avatar at number 22 on their list of top films. These honors demonstrated that despite criticisms about its derivative plot, the film had made a significant impact on cinema and popular culture. The New York Film Critics Online honored the film with its Best Picture award. Avatar won the Critics' Choice Awards of the Broadcast Film Critics Association for Best Action Film in several technical categories out of 9 nominations. It won 2 Street Louis Film Critics Awards for Best Visual Effects and Most Original, Innovative or Creative Film. The film also won BAFTA Awards for Production Design and Special Visual Effects, with 6 additional nominations including Best Film and Director. Prior to Avatar's release, various critics and fan communities predicted it would be a significant box office disappointment, drawing parallels to predictions made about Cameron's previous blockbuster Titanic. Criticism ranged from concerns about the film's massive budget to skepticism about its concept and the use of what some derisively called blue cat people. Slate magazine's Daniel Lindbergh complimented the 3D effects but criticized certain CGI characters for reminding him of the Star Wars prequel films and suffering from the uncanny valley effect, where near-human characters provoke unease rather than empathy. The cultural impact of Avatar became a subject of debate in subsequent years. In 2014, Scott Mendelson of Forbes argued that despite its financial success, the film had been largely forgotten, citing a lack of merchandising, fan communities, or enduring media franchise. He suggested that most general audiences couldn't remember significant details about the film beyond its visual spectacle. This assessment sparked discussions about whether box office success necessarily translated to lasting cultural relevance, especially when compared to franchise films that generated extensive merchandising and fan engagement. Producer John Landau addressed questions about the film's themes and interpretations, noting that movies that work are those with themes bigger than their genre. He emphasized that audiences leave with themes while leaving the plot at the theater. This perspective suggested that the production team was less concerned with creating an original plot structure than with delivering an immersive experience that communicated meaningful environmental and political messages. The debate over Avatar's artistic merit versus its technical achievements persisted throughout its theatrical run and beyond. Supporters argued that dismissing the film for having a familiar story structure missed the point entirely, as the revolutionary visual experience and complete world building were themselves forms of storytelling that transcended traditional narrative. Critics countered that no amount of visual splendor could compensate for what they saw as a simplistic, derivative plot that relied on tired tropes and predictable character arcs. Film scholars analyzing Avatar noted that Cameron had essentially created what could be described as a technical demonstration wrapped in a familiar narrative framework. This approach ensured that audiences wouldn't be distracted by an overly complex plot while experiencing the groundbreaking 3D and motion capture technology. Whether this represented a strength or weakness became a matter of perspective, with some viewing it as strategic filmmaking and others seeing it as a creative compromise. The environmental message at the heart of Avatar resonated strongly with many viewers and critics. The film's depiction of a pristine ecosystem threatened by corporate exploitation and military force struck a chord during a period of growing awareness about climate change and environmental destruction. Multiple reviews highlighted how the film served as an allegory for real-world environmental conflicts, from deforestation in the Amazon to resource extraction on indigenous lands. Religious and spiritual interpretations of the film varied widely. Some viewed the Navi's connection to Iwa, their deity figure, as a refreshing representation of nature-based spirituality and interconnectedness. Others criticized what they saw as a shallow or appropriative portrayal of indigenous spiritual practices. The debate reflected broader tensions about how Hollywood represents non-Western belief systems and whether such representations can never avoid cultural stereotyping. The film's depiction of disability through Jake Sully's character also generated discussion. Jake's paralysis and his liberation through the Avatar body raised questions about representation and the implications of the narrative choice to have a disabled character find fulfillment only by escaping his disabled body. Some disability advocates appreciated the portrayal while others found it problematic. Technical reviews universally praised the cinematography by Mauro Fiore, who would go on to win the Academy Award for his work. Critics marveled at how Fiore had solved unprecedented challenges in merging live action with computer-generated environments, creating a seamless visual experience that maintained consistent lighting and perspective across both elements. The film's use of color, particularly the bioluminescent sequences, became iconic imagery that defined Avatar's visual identity. James Horner's musical score received positive attention for blending orchestral elements with world music influences and the constructed Na'vi language. Critics noted how the score enhanced the emotional impact of key scenes while establishing musical themes that reinforced the film's environmental and spiritual messages. Horner's incorporation of ethnic instruments and vocal styles helped create an authentic sense of the Na'vi culture as something distinct from human civilization. The performances, particularly from the motion capture actors, garnered recognition for pushing the boundaries of what could be achieved through digital acting. Zoe Saldana's portrayal of Neytiri demonstrated that motion capture could convey subtle emotional nuances, from facial micro-expressions to body language. Sam Worthington's dual performance as both the human Jake and his avatar form showcased the technology's potential for character work. Sigourney Weaver brought gravitas to her role as Dr. Grace Augustine, while Stephen Lang created a memorable antagonist in Colonel Quirch. The discourse around Avatar reflected broader conversations about the film industry's priorities and values. Some critics lamented what they saw as the triumph of spectacle over substance, arguing that Avatar's success encouraged studios to prioritize visual effects over storytelling. Others celebrated the film as proof that technological innovation could enhance rather than replace traditional cinematic storytelling, opening new possibilities for filmmakers to realize ambitious visions. Avatar's critical reception ultimately reflected the film's complex position in cinema history as both a technical revolutionary achievement and a narratively conservative work. The film succeeded in demonstrating what was possible with emerging technologies while relying on familiar story structures that ensured broad accessibility. Whether this combination represented the future of blockbuster filmmaking or a cautionary tale about prioritizing spectacle over originality remained a subject of ongoing debate among critics and scholars. The film's ability to generate such diverse and passionate responses, from rapturous praise to dismissive criticism, demonstrated its cultural significance regardless of individual assessments of its quality. Avatar became a touchstone for discussions about cinema's purpose, the relationship between technology and art, the value of original storytelling versus familiar archetypes, and Hollywood's role in addressing global issues like environmentalism and colonialism. These conversations ensured that Avatar's impact extended far beyond its box office achievements into the realm of cultural and critical discourse about the nature and future of cinema itself. When Avatar opened in December 2009 en route to becoming the biggest movie of all time, topping $2.8 billion at the global box office for many moviegoers, it was the first time they experienced digital 3D. Now, filmmaker James Cameron and producer John Landau will reintroduce audiences to their groundbreaking movie with a stunning, newly remastered version for today's cinemas. Starting Friday, audiences will return to a Pandora full of vivid details and colors that they didn't see the last time the movie was in cinemas, back when many theaters were equipped with first-generation digital cinema projectors paired with new 3D systems. And for younger moviegoers, maybe this is the first opportunity to experience Pandora in 3D on a big screen. Cameron and Landau's Lightstorm Entertainment remastered the film in 4K in a high dynamic range, with select scenes at 48 frames per second. For us, 3D is about that window into the world and not a world coming out of a window. We want the screen plane to disappear and for the audiences to get transported into our narrative story, Landau tells The Hollywood Reporter. Doing all these things at the 4K, the high dynamic range, the higher frame rate, and the enhanced sound that transports the audience even more to the world of Pandora. The experience is buoyed by the remastering, coupled with cinemas that offer projection systems capable of doing more than what was possible in 2009. Landau remembers the first time he saw the early tests for the remastering for a scene of Jake Sully, Sam Worthington, first riding the Banshee, the flying creature ridden by the Na'vi. There were colors and details in the Banshee that I didn't know existed. I was saying, oh my god, look at that. Look at that iridescent quality, Landau says with a laugh. When Jake enters the rainforest in the nighttime bioluminescence, the colors, and the detail in the range of colors and how rich your blacks can be and how bright your whites can be, without blowing things out, you go, wow. Selective use of a high frame rate of 48 frames per second was also employed as a creative tool in the remastering, a step that incorporated Pixelworks' TrueCut motion mastering software. Landau notes that in those moments, 48 frames per second made the image appear smoother and more consistent with what the human eye would see in real life. 48 frames for us is not something that necessarily needs to be ubiquitous in every shot, says Landau. 48 frames would not necessarily enhance a close-up. We want to use it as a creative tool, a broken bar where it helps, but where it doesn't take you out of the cinematic feeling of a film. It's a creative tool that you would use just like you would use focus. Sound also has advanced since 2009. For instance, Dolby Atmos wasn't introduced until 2012. Four-time Oscar winner Christopher Boyes gave the new Avatar Master an upgraded mix. Boyes was the supervising sound editor, designer and re-recording mixer on the original Avatar and returns to this role for Avatar: The Way of Water. When you present an image on the screen that has more detail, You need to complement that with sound that has more detail, says Landau, noting that the mix and much of the post-production on the new version were completed at Peter Jackson's Park Road Post in Wellington, New Zealand. To get a sense of the lengths to which Landau and Cameron go to achieve the best possible presentation quality, consider this. In 2009, more than 100 different delivery versions of Avatar, an unprecedented number at the time, were created for its day and date release in 102 countries. That included various grades at different light levels to best accommodate each type of projection system. For this Disney re-release, that number will be considerably higher, and later this year, The Way of Water might encompass the largest number of deliverables ever created for a single movie. We drive the studio operations team crazy, admits Landau. We sit there and say, okay, if we're doing this, let's present the best possible image we can. If a theater is capable of presenting at 14-foot Lamberts, a measure of light, we deliver them a 14-foot Lambert Master. If they're capable of delivering 3.5, those consumers should have the best possible experience they could have. And we do a master for the 3.5-foot Lamberts. The collection of masters also accommodate various aspect ratios and specific requirements for auditoriums configured for Dolby Cinema or IMAX. We take the maximum width and maximum height when we can, the brightest light levels, Landau says, noting that the number of unique versions also includes those to accommodate local languages, subtitles, and the hearing impaired. Says Landau, it's astronomical. The Avatar re-release isn't the end of Cameron and Landau's quest to revisit previous record-breaking films. The duo's Lightstorm Entertainment is additionally planning to remaster Titanic in 4K, in high dynamic range and incorporating a 48 frame per second frame rate. We're getting close to the long-awaited sequel to James Cameron's Avatar, 2009. Let's take a look at the original film as it's re-released in theaters. So much has changed in the world of entertainment in the last 13 years. The mid-budget movie has almost nearly disappeared from the spectrum. Comic book adaptations are the hot thing at the moment. Television is more cinematic than ever before, and the advances in technology being used across the film industry have seen great developments. It took great filmmakers to get to where we are today. And the legendary James Cameron is certainly one of those directors whose mark has changed the game several times now, treating us to films such as The Terminator and Terminator 2, Judgment Day, Aliens, The Abyss, True Lies, Titanic, and, of course, Avatar. The man knows how to deliver pure blockbuster spectacle unlike no other. Anytime the audience and the industry doubt Cameron's abilities as an artist, he proves them wrong and ends up creating massive cultural phenomenons. Take Titanic as an example. 20th Century Fox executives were unhappy with how much money the director was spending on his 3-hour-long epic. They wanted him to cut down the film in fear that, with such a runtime, it wouldn't be shown as many times per day at the movie theaters, thus not making the profit the studio wished for. As history tells us, Cameron stuck to his vision and Titanic went on to become the highest grossing film of all time for 12 long years and was the first film to ever reach the $1 billion mark, only to be dethroned by another Cameron film that people had their doubts about, Avatar. James Cameron's Avatar takes us on an otherworldly adventure with Jake Sully, Sam Worthington, under the banner of heaven. Jake is a paraplegic ex-marine that's dispatched to an alien planet named Pandora on a mission to infiltrate the humanoid species of the Na'vi, so he can aid a greedy corporation mine for precious minerals scattered across the land. Because Pandora's environment is filled with dangerous life forms and its atmosphere is toxic for humans, Jake and his colleagues are forced to enter the Avatar program, where they're given artificial Na'vi vessels so they can transport their minds into the alien bodies. After spending time with the Na'vi and learning to appreciate their culture, Jake finds himself torn between worlds. Should he help the alien species survive against the outsiders, or remain loyal to humanity? It is no easy task to build a completely new world from the ground up. Like some of the most iconic locations in fiction, Pandora feels tangible. It gives out the idea that it is a real place in outer space that you could visit. For a fictional planet that is entirely brought to life through computer-generated effects, it feels alive and oozes personality, certainly more so than most franchises do today with their attempts at world building. The grand, colorful landscapes of Pandora to this day does not fail to impress and take your breath away. not even 13 years later since its inception. Avatar's visuals are as photoreal as they are because of Cameron and his team's innovative methods to bring the film to life. Weta Digital, one of the VFX production companies that worked on the project, used motion capture to make Cameron's ambitious vision a reality. This kind of technique wasn't necessarily new, as Andy Serkis, the Batman, had been playing with motion capture years prior during the making of Peter Jackson's King Kong and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. What the crew of Avatar did do new, though, is not only use motion capture, but reinvent what was possible by creating facial motion capture. With the help of their own developed software, Weta Digital was able to map out the performers' individual facial muscle movements, allowing the actors to emote without their performances being lost in translation, resulting in realistic-looking humanoid creatures. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Cameron dedicated a large amount of time developing the rules and visuals of his sci-fi epic than he did with his characters, for better or for worse. On top of his difficult work with Weta Digital, the visionary director asked for a virtual camera to be created that'd allow Cameron to see what Pandora's surroundings would look like during filming. This tool was called the Volume, which would later on evolve into the grand LED sets we know today through The Mandalorian and The Batman. Was the effort worth it? Well, the finished product speaks for itself. From the jungles of Pandora to the planet's floating rocks, the Na'vi, the beautiful flying banshees, the intimidating Thanator, and the dire horses, all of the creature designs in Avatar are unique, yet familiar enough for us to comprehend what kind of threat they present to our characters. All of this thanks to Cameron's determination to push the technology forward in order to make his dream project a reality. A major criticism Avatar faced back in the day, and still does today, was the fact that its storytelling is very simplistic and by the numbers. Immediate comparisons were made to films such as Pocahontas and Dances with Wolves, where an outsider comes into the home of an indigenous people, has a change of heart, and decides to help the natives protect their lands from the evil, greedy colonizers. You would be correct to make such connections between these works of art. Avatar is guilty of all charges, especially of carrying the white savior trope on its back. The thing about this controversy is that I don't believe we come to James Cameron's Pandora to be blown away by the originality in its premise. We come to the world of the Na'vi to be amazed by the sheer scale and sense of wonder that Cameron created and how he plays with the classic sci-fi/fantasy archetypes. Sam Worthington's career has been brutally criticized ever since Hollywood tried to push him to be the next action star back in the late 2000s and early 2010s. Yes, some of the parts he played weren't necessarily Shakespearean, but I wouldn't blame the man for being handed poor scripts. Worthington has proven he's an exceptional actor when he is given the opportunity to shine, like with his supporting roles in Hacksaw Ridge and Everest. Jake Sully might not be the most fascinating protagonist of the modern era, but he's definitely not the worst, nor is he nearly as bad as people make him out to be. He fits the role of the arrogant underdog who needs to see there is more to life beyond what's on the surface, making him a better person by the time he nears the end of his journey. We can criticize the white messiah undertones that are built around the character, coming in to save the natives of Pandora, but I wouldn't say Jake is in any way near the worst character in the film. People love Stephen Lang, Don't Breathe, who plays Colonel Miles Quaritch in the film. Lang has that perfect on-screen balance where he can be equally likable and terrifying. His character in Avatar, though, just falls flat from achieving either of these things. Quaritch is overly serious to be charming, and too silly to be threatening, hence ending up with a character that is not memorable at all. Same thing can be said for Giovanni Ribisi, the Offer, who plays your typical corporate guy, and Michelle Rodriguez, F9, the Fast Saga, who is incredibly underutilized. Then there is Sigourney Weaver, Call Jane, who is as delightful as she usually is, but we aren't sure if her character is written that way, or if it is Weaver's charisma that shines through. The one real standout in Avatar is Zoe Saldana, the Adam Project, as Neytiri, the daughter of the chief of the Na'vi tribe Omaticaya. It shouldn't come as a surprise that Neytiri is the only character in the film that everyone seems to remember. Saldana's character has so much heart to the point that it is tough to find a reason not to like her. Throughout the years, the argument has been made that the film should have focused on her and not Jake Sully. Beliefs that are only reinforced with the marketing campaign of the re-release for Avatar, as Neytiri is front and center of the new posters. For what is worth though, Worthington does shine the brightest in the film when he shares the screen with Saldana. They bring out the best in each other, and for two blue aliens that look like giant cats, their romance is genuinely believable. You can't expect less from the man that brought us the epic love story between Rose and Jack in Titanic. Is it as good or epic as that romance? No, but Jake and Neytiri's relationship brings a much necessary sense of urgency to the film in terms of what's at stake and what they could potentially lose. When it comes to the action genre, James Cameron is one of the very best at it. As opposed to some of his peers, such as Christopher McQuarrie, the Wachowskis, Michael Mann, George Miller, or Michael Bay, Cameron may not have a distinct visual language to showcase his vision, but what he lacks in this area he makes up for in his characters and simplicity. Many of the already mentioned filmmakers are well known for their stylish and innovative action. Michael Bay is remembered for his Bayhem approach to set pieces, where there needs to be explosions and a sunset every 5 to 10 minutes. In contrast, the reason why both of Cameron's Terminator films are as iconic as they are is because they are character-driven stories. James places his protagonist against impossible odds, a mother and son against a time-traveling killing machine for example, and goes up and beyond to exploit what is possible with such a premise. In Avatar, we might not be as invested in the characters as we should, but the action still resonates with us because James Cameron manages to present his set pieces in a grounded manner. Instead of falling victim of overusing techniques such as one continuous takes or shaky cams, things that have become widely popular in the action genre, Cameron shoots his action in a more traditional way, using helicopter shots for example, despite the movie itself taking large leaps into the future of visual effects. I think that is one of the many beauties of Avatar and James Cameron's eye for storytelling. He does try to push the envelope, but not at the expense of what makes a film, well, a film. Nowadays we see so many blockbusters abuse VFX to the point that it gives their movies an almost fake look to them. Sure, seeing Thor fight against an entire army by himself in the latest MCU film is visually cool, but not always engaging. Avatar, on the other hand, holds up better than most movies made today because it provides an out-of-body experience, while also remaining simple to follow. I believe it is inevitable to discuss the elephant in the room. Is Avatar truly the mega hit that nobody remembers, or are viewers simply exaggerating because it is easy to hate on a popular film? The answer, I think, isn't as simple as we may hope for. For starters, it would be silly to ignore the wave of 3D-driven films that followed in the coming decade after Avatar was released to the public in 2009. I mean, 3D was everywhere. Every major summer blockbuster had a 3D option playing opposite to their 2D counterparts. In addition, we saw the rise, and fall, of 3D television and Blu-ray sets. While an immersive viewing experience at the movie theater, most consumers felt the technology to be unnecessary and even distracting at home, leading to the decline in sales of 3D TV sets. Then there's the issue of 3D in theaters. Rather than being an extra layer in the movie-going experience, as James Cameron intended with Avatar, the technology became a lame gimmick. Filmmakers and studios alike would soon use the technique to throw things into people's faces in hopes that would be enough to create a strong positive reaction. What instead happened was the death of 3D as we know it. There are 3D showings of certain films every once in a while, but it isn't the juggernaut it once was when Cameron revolutionized it. Aside from the fatigue with the technology, society just didn't seem to care to keep a fandom going for the world of Pandora. You don't really see people dressing up as Na'vi for Halloween. It is rare for Avatar to be brought up during a film-related discussion. I hardly ever hear moviegoers describe Cameron's sci-fi epic as one of their favorite films ever made. I've heard this argument being made for both of his Terminator entries, Titanic and Aliens, but not really for Avatar. I'm certain those people exist, but they surely don't make themselves known very often. As a result, Avatar's story, or lack of, became a laughing punchline. It wasn't just that it was too cliché / copyright, it was that nobody remembered how the film handled such tropes to begin with. To make matters worse, we've been forced to wait over a decade to return to this world, allowing critics to tear the original film apart, and people's memories of Avatar fading away in the meantime. In a world where there are, at the very least, 5 comic book movies released in a singular calendar year, with just as many big-budget TV series on the small screen, I can't really take the argument that Avatar is forgettable seriously. You mean to tell me you vividly remember every tiny little detail about the plot of Thor, Love Thunder? Or that somehow the Fast and Furious series is a far superior storytelling achievement than a James Cameron production? Opinions are subjective, that's true. But to make such statements seems hypocritical to me when half of today's box office hits utilize the same cliché copyright and technological techniques Avatar was criticized for. Perhaps some films might use James Cameron's techniques better than he did at the time, but my point remains the same. This is not to say we haven't seen great blockbusters in the past 13 years. Some standouts include Dune, Interstellar, Mad Max, Fury Road, Star Wars, The Last Jedi, Blade Runner 2049, and most recently Top Gun, Maverick. Like your average audience members, I do enjoy the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I love all kinds of films, blockbusters and independent movies. I don't discriminate based on the genre, overused cliché copyright or not. This is why I give storytellers the benefit of the doubt, and why I know way too well not to doubt James Cameron when he has his mind set on a project. When I see people joke that Cameron has spent the last decade of his life making sequels to his Blue Aliens movie, I have no other option but to roll my eyes. If the man is taking his time, it is for a good reason. After the release of the first teaser trailer for Avatar, The Way of Water, cinephiles have not failed to point out how the madman of a director seems to have yet again revolutionized the VFX industry with his new technology for underwater scenes. If this is a reminder of anything, it is to never bet against James Cameron because he will prove you wrong. Director, Screenplay A. James Cameron, Producers A. James Cameron, John Landau, Photography, 3D, A. Mauro Fiore, Music A. James Horner, Visual Effects A. Buff, Blur Studios, Framestore, Supervisors A. Jonathan Faulkner, Tim Weber, Hybrid, Supervisor A. Daniel Leduc, Hydra LX, Industrial Light and Magic, Supervisor A. John Knoll, Pixel Liberation Front, Prime Focus, Supervisor A. Chris Bond, Weta Digital, Senior Supervisor A. Joe Lettery, Visual Effects Supervisors A. Eric Sandin, Guy Williams, Animation Directors A. Richard Bainham, Andrew Jones, Character Designs A. Stan Winston Studio, Supervisor A. John Rosengrant, Performance Capture A. Giant Studios, Special Effects Supervisor A. Steve Ingram, Production Design E. Rick Carter, Robert Stromberg, Production Company A. 20th Century Fox, Dune Entertainment, Ingenious Film Partners, Lightstorm Entertainment. Cast: Sam Worthington, Corporal Jake Sully, Zoe Saldana, Nate Thierry, Stephen Lang, Colonel Miles Quaritch, Sigourney Weaver, Dr. Grace Augustine, Joel David Moore, Norm Spellman, Michelle Rodriguez, Trudy Chacon, Giovanni Ribisi, Parker Selfridge, Laz Alonso, Ziddy, CCH, Pounder, Mutt, Wes Studi, Itakin, Dilip Rao, Dr. Max Patel. Plot: the year 2154. Jake Sully, a Marine who has been paralyzed from the waist down, is recruited by the military for an assignment to the planet Pandora. Pandora is inhabited by a species of 4-meter-tall aliens known as the Navi. It is also the source of the incredibly valuable mineral unobtainium, but the Navi have become hostile to the human presence. Scientists have attempted to blend in with the Navi with the use of avatars, bodies that are a mix of Navi and human DNA that a human operates remotely via an URL connection. Jake is asked to replace his twin brother who had trained as an avatar operator before he was killed, where Jake will be able to use his brother's avatar because they share the same DNA. Jake takes to his avatar form with great relish. However, on his first venture out into the field, Jake is attacked by Pandora's wild animals and separated from the team. Abandoned in the wild, Jake is saved by a Navi girl, Nate Thierry. She is about to kill him when glowing fronds surround Jake and she believes this to be a sign that he is chosen. On the basis of this, Jake is reluctantly accepted into the Omaticaya tribe. The human scientists regard this as a prime opportunity to study the Navi, but Colonel Miles Quaritch reminds Jake he is under military orders and instructs him to gain the Navy's trust and survey their territory. Under Nate Ree's tuition, Jake learns the ways of the Navy, including how to meld with and fly their creatures. The scientists come to realize that every living thing on Pandora is neurally linked. However, Quaritch and his soldiers are determined to demolish the Omatakai beneath which lies the planet's richest source of unobtainium. Realizing that this means the wholesale slaughter of the Navy, Jake takes sides to organize the Navy, armed only with bows and arrows, to stand up against the vastly overwhelming might and firepower of the human military. Most of the press coverage given to Avatar seemed to focus on headlines like James Cameron, the director of Titanic, 1997, makes his return to cinema screens after a 12-year absence. Much of this gives the impression of being written by people in their early 20s, and what doesn't come through is just how much James Cameron is a force that has changed the face of modern cinema. Cameron is the father of the modern CGI effects revolution. He was also the person who single-handedly transformed action cinema into something that has become focused increasingly on mass spectacle. Without James Cameron, there would be no Ronald Emmerich, no Michael Bay, no Wachowskis, and no Peter Jackson. Well, they would be there, but all of the work they have put out in the last decade and a half is only building on the groundwork that Cameron laid down. After working in various special effects and production design capacities at New World, James Cameron made an inauspicious directorial debut with Piranha 2, Flying Killers, 1981, before setting the world afire with The Terminator, 1984. The Terminator was a B-plus budget miracle that became a massive hit and produced a landslide of copycat killer android films, as well as sparked off a great interest in time travel themes throughout the 1980s. Next up for Cameron was the massively successful Aliens, 1986, which also produced numerous imitators and is regarded as one of the best science fiction films of the 1980s. However, the most groundbreaking of Cameron's films was ironically one of his most troubled and least successful, the underwater alien contact film The Abyss, 1989. What was notable about this was one scene where the crew encounter a tentacle made of water. This was one of the very first computer-generated special effects sequences on film and the first to be integrated with live action. The Abyss also staked out Cameron's reputation as someone who would go to enormous lengths in furtherance of his vision, and as an exacting taskmaster and control freak who would push casts to the limit of their endurance. The film that indisputably changed things was Cameron's subsequent film Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991, which wowed the world with its novel vision of a liquid metal Terminator. This sparked a major revolution in CGI effects. Dozens of digital effects houses popped up overnight and the CGI blockbuster was born. Cameron next went on to make the spy comedy True Lies, 1994, which, though enjoyable, remains one of his lesser films and did only modest box office. Cameron bounced back with Titanic, which was less a film than it was a phenomenon, a massively scaled mixture of weepy romance and special effects spectacular. It became the world's top-grossing film and netted Cameron a Best Director Academy Award, which begat the infamous "I am the king of the world" speech. From Terminator 2 onwards, Cameron also created a reputation for colossal budgets. Terminator 2 was the first film to top the $100 million budget mark, and each of his subsequent films, including Avatar, have been the most expensive films ever made at the time they came out. Titanic, the first film to top the $200 million mark, was even in danger of being shut down by the studio because of its massively out-of-control budget. Oddly, since Titanic and becoming the king of the world, the least thing one expected James Cameron to do was a broken bar nothing much at all. In the ensuing decade and a half, Cameron gave all appearance of having done a George Lucas and gone into seclusion. He has been around. There have been odd-mooted projects like a Mars film in the early zeros, but that never amounted to anything concrete, least of all even receiving a title A, as well as non-directing work like creating, producing the TV series Dark Angel, 2002, and producing Steven Soderbergh's remake of Solaris, 2002. Cameron also wrote the script for the long-planned remake of Fantastic Voyage, 1966, which Roland Emmerich claims he rejected. While Cameron was edged out of credit for his original script for Spider-Man, 2002, written back in the 1980s, through Writers Guild arbitration. Mostly, Cameron has spent the time indulging his passion deep sea diving and exploration, where he has directed several short IMAX 3D documentaries about the underwater environment with Expedition, Bismarck, 2002, Ghosts of the Abyss, 2003, and Aliens of the Deep, 2005, as well as producing other similar shorts like Volcanoes of the Deep, 2003, Last Mysteries of the Titanic, 2005, and Titanic Adventure, 2005. Oh, and there was also the brief venture into biblical documentary making as producer, narrator of The Exodus Decoded, 2006, which held up archaeological evidence for the Exodus, and the highly contentious The Lost Tomb of Jesus, 2007, which tried to argue an archaeologically specious case for the discovery of Jesus Christ's Alwari. The reasons for the length of time between Titanic and Avatar seems to be twofold. Cameron originally announced Avatar back in 1991 at the time of Terminator 2. Back then, Cameron's originally proposed version of Avatar was rejected by studios as being too expensive. Much of the reason for the delay comes down to the stated one that Cameron has given in press interviews, of having to wait for the technology to catch up with being able to deliver his vision. The possibility of making Avatar did not come about until Cameron saw the CGI Gollum in The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, 2002, and realized that the time had arrived. Indeed, it was purportedly Peter Jackson who personally persuaded Cameron to step back into the director's chair. As a result, the substantial part of Avatar was shot at Jackson's Weta Effects shop in Wellington. The technology lag still does not explain why Cameron could not have gone on to some other project in the decade in between. The larger problem one suspects that Cameron faced in making his comeback was the daunting question of how does one top a phenomenon like Titanic. It is great to have James Cameron back on cinema screens. Unlike the similar absence taken by George Lucas between the mid-1980s and the end of the 1990s, Cameron shows he has lost none of the things that made him great. Avatar is an epic in all sense of the meaning. There are all the things that one expects of a James Cameron film, the obsession with technology, both in terms of the hardware we see up on screen and the technology that is driving it behind the cameras. Cameron and his design team create some fabulous machines, vast flotillas of helicopter gunships, massive mining machinery, militarized versions of the power loader in Aliens, a beautiful spaceship with solar cells that opens the film, and all manner of casual technical detail littered in the background. More importantly, Cameron gives us an alien world in the true sense of the meaning. In most science fiction films and television, the various Star Trek series being particularly guilty offenders, alienness never amounts to anything more than extras with a few facial appliances covering their noses and foreheads. In these there is frustratingly little effort made to conceive of something that is truly alien and goes beyond the standard human-like anthropomorphism. Avatar is not entirely free of that humanocentrism, but Cameron makes considerable effort to create an entirely alien-seeming race of aliens, blue-skinned, 4 meters tall and with a comprehensive culture of their own, and where most conceptions of alien worlds never extends beyond locations that can be found in California state. Star Trek again being a prominent guilty offender, this is an alien world where for once its flora and fauna lives and breathes in stunning detail that has been designed from the ground up. My only minor quibbles with the conception of the world is that if it is a low-gravity environment as it is said, which would logically lead to much taller, thinner natives, the humans never seem to be moving in lighter gravity. Cameron casually immerses us in the world of the Na'vi, swooping, swimming and diving through an ecosystem that opens up for us like a neon day glow vision of Tarzan's jungle paradise. The scenes with Sam Worthington being attacked by the Pandoran wild animals, of him leaping through the trees, scaling floating mountains on creepers, all have a visually exhilarating kinesis to them. The sequences where Sam discovers how to ride the Ikran hold a wild elation, where the 3D camera work lifts one soaring up alongside at the sheer beauty of the scene. Like Titanic, Cameron saves his most dazzling set pieces for later in the film with the toppling of the Homa tree. However, this is superseded by the visually stunning climactic scenes with the humans and Na'vi in combat, both on the ground and in the skies, and with Sam Worthington's Avatar and Stephen Lang's power loader suit in hand-to-hand combat. Unlike most other CGI directors, Cameron successfully conducts a delicate balancing act where he manages to both have the fanboy in one wowing at the spectacle of mass destruction at the same time as one's heart is wrenching at the devastating loss of life and death of characters. It's the man who started the revolution in computer-generated effects coming back to show the world he hasn't been idle or left behind for the last decade, and proving conclusively he is still light years ahead of his imitators. There was a certain degree of panic among studio executives when the first trailer for Avatar went out and started getting sarcastic comments from bloggers about looking like a high-resolution video game or that the aliens resembled big Smurfs. However, seeing the full film up on screen, surely only the most nitpicking of geeks would complain about the results. That half of the film can be considered to be animated is not ever a question that arises. Unlike some of Robert Zemeckis' ventures into feature-length performance capture animation such as Beowulf, 2007, and A Christmas Carol, 2009, you are never self-consciously reminded that what you are watching is animation. The melding of live action and motion captured animation is flawlessly integrated to the point that the dividing line between the two seems irrelevant, as this is maybe the first animated film where the audience doesn't even consider they are watching animation. For all the triumphant hymns to technology he constructs in his films, James Cameron is constantly seeking a human heart inside the hurtling juggernauts we see up on screen. Throughout works like The Abyss and Terminator 2 run the constant themes that protagonists must look beyond technology and seek their essential humanity. Avatar takes this furthest of any Cameron films so far. Despite being the biggest technology-driven film of the year, the irony of Avatar is that the end triumph its good guys reach lies in abandoning technology altogether and opting for a pantheist mysticism in harmony with nature. It is worth comparing James Cameron to author Michael Crichton. Both cover very similar territory. Crichton similarly loved the display of cutting-edge technology and filled his books with a density of detail that showed he had done his research. However, when it came to humanity, Crichton was a pessimist. There were no triumphs of the human in his book except in a desultory plot-turning denouement kind of way, and his stories regularly featured stories about problems caused by human greed, stupidity or overlooked design flaws in the technology. By contrast, Cameron covers the same general territory but is far more of an optimist. Cameron and Crichton's work has a number of parallels. Where Crichton made Westworld, 1973, about androids going amok, Cameron made the Terminator films. Although Westworld is lacking Cameron's ardently found triumph of the human over the machine. Where Cameron made The Abyss, Crichton wrote the almost identical Sphere, 1987, later filmed as Sphere, 1988. Both are films about the crew of an underwater habitat encountering alien life forms and vehicles on the ocean floor. For Crichton, this was something that amplified the worst human fears, and we were better off without the wonders it might hold. For Cameron, it was about traveling beyond fears of the unknown to a transcendent communion and eventual message of world peace. It is also worth comparing Avatar with Michael Crichton's novel State of Play, 2004. Though the plots and subject matter are vastly different, both deal with the big contemporary issue of the environment. Where Crichton concluded that global warming was a fraud perpetuated by a Greenpeace-like organization, Cameron, a completely opposite remove, has his heroes switching off their technology and becoming back to nature tree huggers communing with the environment. Indeed, it may be that beneath the wondrous array of CGI on display in Avatar, James Cameron has just produced the most expensive environmental advocacy commercial ever made. There is also undeniable similarity between Avatar and Surrogates, 2009, which came out 3 months earlier the same year. Both films feature futures where it is accepted practice for people to use neural amplifiers that allow them to remotely inhabit artificial bodies. In both films, the world of these avatar bodies has a wondrousness that comes to surpass the mundane reality of ordinary people living in aging or crippled bodies. On the other hand, both films are also wildly different in what they conclude about these avatars. For Surrogates, the practice is not real, and Bruce Willis is here a little more than a grumpy old man who brings the entire system down because he does not like the artificiality it represents. By contrast, James Cameron goes completely the other way and sees the virtual avatars as a means whereby humans can reconnect with nature. This is somewhat ironic considering that the film's emphasis is the abandonment of technology, Although Cameron plays up the disparity with Sam Worthington's attempts to lead the Na'vi resistance constantly being thwarted as the military are trying to drag him out of the Avatar chamber or smash it apart. Mostly, it feels like Cameron has borrowed the plot for Avatar from the modern revisionist American Indian drama. Avatar could fairly much be considered, at least on a plot level, to be Dances with Wolves, 1990, but where the Indians are played by giant blue aliens who fly lizards instead of ride horses. In both stories, there is the character of a white man who comes from an oppressive colonial culture who goes native and is reluctantly accepted into the tribal culture where he comes to master its warrior ways and then eventually leads the fight back against the white people as they attempt to move in with genocidal regard. In both films, there is also the character of a native woman that the hero bonds with and of the lead native brave who bristles with hostility at the hero's increasing proficiency in the ways of war before they both realize they are on the same side and unite against the common enemy. The parallels to Dances with Wolves even extend to having the hero of both at the outset facing the prospect of life without the use of his legs before rediscovering himself on the frontier world. Although more than anything, the single work that James Cameron owes his debt of inspiration to is Ursula Le Guin's novel The Word for a World is Forest, 1976, which, minus the Avatar angle, concerns the ruthless attempts of human colonists to demolish a forest in which a group of alien natives have bonded with the environment and share a connection, dreaming in the book, that the colonists fail to understand. Certainly, Cameron is not above making parallels to modern military. In fact, Avatar is perhaps one of the strongest anti-military films made in some time. Stephen Lang's Colonel is made into a villain of the least redeemable order. The role makes amusing contrast to Lang's turn as a military officer in The Men Who Stare at Goats, 2009, which came out 1 month earlier. All of this is a considerable turnaround for Cameron, who has in the past seemed like someone who has gotten off on military hardware and bustle. This is after all the man who wrote the script for Rambo: First Blood Part 2, 1985, and directed Aliens, which has become the film that military SF junkies get themselves off to. Mindedly, Cameron's work from The Abyss through Terminator 2 has become an increasingly pacifist one, with Cameron being particularly outspoken against the nuclear arms race throughout these. The scenes with the military here could be effortlessly merged with the ones of the Marines in Aliens. Indeed, Michelle Rodriguez's pilot character seemed like an attempt on Cameron's part to rehash the character of Jeanette Goldstein's Vasquez, but their portrayal here is almost as opposite extremes to Aliens, where the everyday grunt heroes there have now become genocidal killers. Cameron's implied critique throughout Avatar is of the frequent sense to which the military is employed to bolster up economic imperative, as was the case in much of the British Empire and during the colonization of the Indians in North America. Not to mention the two Gulf Wars. Cameron only too clearly sees modern parallels with Iraq, co-opting the Iraq War buzzword of shock and awe at one point. In seeing Avatar in more modern terms, Cameron's sympathy and point of view becomes a surprisingly radical one. If you read Avatar in terms of analogy to the Iraq War, you have to conclude that Cameron's sympathies are entirely with the Iraqis and wholly in empathy with the freedom fighters conducting suicide bombings and low-tech guerrilla-styled insurgency movements against the military occupation. While most American audiences have switched off at films that tackle issues of the Iraq War head-on, Cameron has subversively gotten away with this simply by doing the old Star Trek, 1966-9. Standby of recasting the issue with alien faces and setting it on another planet. In so doing, he has produced a far more ardently outspoken anti-war work than all of the Fahrenheit 9/11, 2004's and their imitators put together. It is an amazingly subversive touch for a film that was one of the top box office hits of 2009 and subsequently the #1 hit of all time. Not to mention for someone like Cameron to have snuck such out the front door of 20th Century Fox past Rupert Murdoch and the same studio that produces the Fox News Channel. Avatar was nominated for Best Picture and James Cameron for Best Director at that year's Academy Awards, receiving wins for Best Cinematography, Best Music and Best Visual Effects. James Cameron has announced 4 Avatar sequels for the 2020s. The first of these to be released was Avatar: The Way of Water, 2022, followed by Avatar: Fire and Ash, 2025. Avatar was parodied in The Starving Games, 2013. James Cameron has also written the millennial virtual reality film Strange Days, 1995, which was directed by his ex-wife Catherine Bigelow, and wrote, produced the manga adaptation Alita, Battle Angel, 2019, and Terminator, Dark Fate, 2019, as well as produced the near-feature TV series Dark Angel, 2002, the remake of Solaris, 2002, the rock diving survival film Sanctum, 2011, and Cirque du Soleil, Worlds Away, 2012. He also hosted and produced the TV documentary series AMC Visionaries, James Cameron's The Story of Science Fiction, 2018. Winner for Best Film in this site's Top 10 Films of 2009 list. Winner for Best Director, James Cameron, and Best Special Effects. Nominee for Best Original Screenplay, Best Supporting Actress, Sigourney Weaver, and Best Production Design at this site's Best of 2009 awards. James Cameron's eagerly anticipated follow-up to Avatar is going to be delayed until at least 2015, producer John Landau said Thursday. Contrary to previous statements that indicated Avatar 2 would arrive in theaters in December 2014 and Avatar 3 would follow in 2015. Landau revealed that the first of two proposed sequels probably won't be ready within the next 2 years. We're not naming dates, but I think 2014 will be a tough date for us to make, Landau told Empire. It's about getting it right. A broken bar. Movies make release dates. Release dates don't make movies. Possible reasons for a delay include Cameron spending time with his recent dive to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and his overseeing of the 3D conversion of Titanic. Although Landau and Cameron outlined the release schedule for the two films, neither committed to specific release dates. Regardless, despite the fact that Cameron plans to shoot Avatar 2 and 3 back-to-back, Landau also insisted that each of the films will and must have standalone. That's where movies fall into trouble when they try to say, you know what? It's really one movie and there's an intermission so we want each one to be a standalone movie. The next one will kick off where the last one ended, he said. But just like Avatar resolved itself and doesn't feel like a setup to another movie, you don't want Avatar 2 to feel like a setup for 3. Meanwhile, Cameron's Manhattan Beach studio is up and running, and Landau indicated that the filmmaker has already begun collaborating with the New Zealand effects company Weta Digital, which is developing an underwater motion capture system that will allow him to bring to life the oceans of Pandora. Nevertheless, Landau insisted that not all of the film will take place underwater. It's going to be like the floating mountains in the first movie, he said. It's not going to be all underwater. It's going to be a place we go to, leave and come back to. Disney and 20th Century confirmed Tuesday that James Cameron's Avatar will return to theaters nationwide and overseas on September 23 in remastered 4K high dynamic range. The re-release of Avatar comes 3 months before the highly anticipated sequel Avatar, The Way of Water hits the big screen around the globe, including on December 16 in North America. Avatar is the top-grossing film of all time at the worldwide box office, collecting $2.84 billion in ticket sales. Comscore box office analyst Paul Durgarabadian says playing the original film will help provide a marketing tailwind ahead of the sequel. Disney sees a benefit in re-releasing the movie as a reminder to fans in North America, most of whom have not seen the all-time global box office champ since its special edition release almost 12 years ago, says Durgarabadian. In 2010, the special edition Avatar event did big business for a re-release, earning $10.7 million in North America and $34 million overseas for a total of $44 million. And in early 2021, the re-release of the fantasy adventure in China earned an impressive $57.7 million. While September always tends to be on the quieter side, September 2022 is notably lean in terms of high-profile Hollywood product as studios contend with an ongoing post-production backlog due to the pandemic. This could benefit the Avatar release. As of now, the only other nationwide release scheduled for September 23 is the indie film The Railway Children Return, a family adventure. 20th Century and Disney revealed the first teaser trailer for Avatar, The Way of Water in early May, shortly after CinemaCon, the annual gathering of theater owners. During the Avatar, The Way of the Water presentation at CinemaCon, producer John Landau first announced plans to re-release the original Avatar on September 23 with restored picture and sound. "We need to make sure audiences have an experience they can't get anywhere else, and that needs to be exclusively in theaters," said Landau. Landau and their Lightstorm Entertainment, along with 20th Century and Disney, are expected to offer The Way of Water in a wide variety of formats to support the range of theater installations, including the use of 3D, 4K and a high frame rate of 48 frames per second. Each of the 4 Avatar sequels will center on returning Jake Sully, played by Sam Worthington, along with Navi Neytiri, played by Zoe Saldana +A, and their family, and the lengths they go to keep each other safe. James Cameron's blockbuster epic Titanic has relinquished its spot as the 3rd highest grossing movie in history to another James Cameron blockbuster epic, Avatar, The Way of Water. The sci-fi sequel has generated $2.2433 billion globally, enough to overtake Titanic, $2.2428 billion, at the worldwide box office. Now, The Way of Water trails only Avatar, $2.92 billion. And Avengers, Endgame, $2.7 billion, on the all-time charts. Cameron, the sole filmmaker with 3 movies to gross $2 billion or more, has directed the 1st, 3rd and 4th biggest releases ever. James Cameron just continues to chase himself on the box office charts, says Sean Robbins, the chief analyst at Box Office Pro. He clearly knows how to engage a modern audience. Like the original Avatar, the follow-up's success is attributed to its generation-spanning appeal as well as the incentive to watch the film in premium and 3D formats. On IMAX screens, the movie has crossed $250 million. That's more coinage than many films manage to earn in their entire theatrical runs. In North America, The Way of Water is the 9th highest grossing movie ever with $657 million to date. In order to fly higher on the all-time domestic charts, it'll have to take down Titanic, at number 8 with $659 million, and Avengers, Infinity War, at number 7 with $678 million. Elsewhere, Avatar 2 recently passed Titanic to become the 3rd highest grossing international release ever with $1.585 billion. It's behind only 2009's Avatar, $2.1 billion, and Avengers, Endgame, $1.9 billion. In terms of overseas ticket sales, standout markets include China, $242 million, France, $144 million, Germany, $135 million, and Korea, $106 million. It ranks as highest grossing film of all time in more than 20 countries, including France, Germany, Austria, Bulgaria, Czech Rep, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lebanon, Lithuania, Norway, Portugal, Romania, Slovenia, Slovakia, Turkey, UAE, Cambodia, Mongolia, New Zealand, Colombia and Puerto Rico. Disney and 20th Century spent roughly $460 million to produce and promote The Way of Water, which is one of the most expensive films ever. The long-delayed sequel opened on the big screen in December and has remained in the top 5 on box office charts for 10 consecutive weeks. Zoe Saldana +A and Sam Worthington star in the otherworldly saga about family. A 3rd installment is set to debut in December 2024 with plans for 4th and 5th entries in the coming years. Despite its release being months away, fans have already been hypnotized by the special effects in Avatar, The Way of Water, thanks to released images that show how it will incorporate beautiful underwater CGI. It's a reminder that Avatar's story has always been about developing new technology to match James Cameron's vision rather than compromising with what already exists. From revolutionary CGI to a new way of filming actors in performance capture, These are just some of the mind-boggling innovations that went into the effects of 2009's Avatar. Avatar used a new kind of performance capture camera. Avatar was surprisingly one of the earliest big blockbusters to be filmed entirely on digital cameras and became the first digitally shot movie to win an Academy Award for Best Cinematography. The more interesting part is that New Zealand effects company Weta produced the scenes with a performance capture camera, referred to as a swing camera because of how it allowed camera in a freer range of movement whilst filming mocap scenes. It didn't have the lens. It instead tracked countless movement markers relative to the actors themselves and fed it back directly to an LCD screen. As noted in Connect, they were able to see live performances as they would look in Pandora naturally. One of the challenges of crafting a movie that takes place largely in CGI environments is that it can be hard to visualize how the actors' performances will actually look in the Pandora world, as small amounts of CGI can look terrible in some movies. Creating almost everything in CGI and having it be seamless was always going to be a challenge. However, Weta's new Simulcam, as described in Vanity Fair, was able to combine the live-action footage with CGI in real time, allowing Cameron and the effects teams to gain a unique insight into how the scene would turn out. Eliminating this awkward problem is a big reason why it's so easy to forget the actors were actually on a soundstage whilst watching Avatar. Avatar used the world's largest ever performance capture stage. Another awkward issue with filming on green screen stages rather than in real-life environments is that it can become obvious from the way actors move that the space they're really in is far smaller than the CGI one. In order to try and achieve the rare feat of creating a movie where the CGI goes unnoticed, Cameron made use of an extremely large performance capture stage. In fact, for the making of Avatar, they created a stage that was 6 times larger than usual, as reported in Bloomberg. Along with the freedom the swing camera allowed, this helps explain how they crafted such fluid performances that make Pandora feel like a real place in a movie. Avatar made use of CGI to ensure better performances from its actors. Cameron's faith in the ability of CGI to empower actors rather than replace them was rewarded when he was able to use new technology to make it far easier for them to give convincing performances in Avatar. As he explained in an interview and was reported in the Wrap, it meant they were able to capture an actor's facial performance completely, unhindered by rubber makeup and the like. Cameron explained that they were able to capture 100% of an actor's performance with computers and then animate the world around them, allowing for a much more natural performance. Whilst some actors may still prefer shooting movies the old-fashioned way, the fact that so many actors are returning for Avatar 2 suggests the process worked for them. They filmed entirely CGI scenes without storyboards. With how much planning is required to make a completely CGI scene turn out to the filmmaker's liking, it's extremely rare to go into filming without a thorough plan for how the characters and camera will move. However, Cameron's preference for filmmaking by feel and critiquing performances in the moment meant Weta had to adjust to his needs. As told in Connect, thanks to other innovations such as the revolutionary camera that allowed him to see how the performance would look in Pandora, they were able to meet his requirements and allow the director to work more fluidly with his actors as in a more traditional movie. Avatar had a realistic interaction between a real actor and a CGI character, as the best live-action/animation hybrid movies have demonstrated. Interactions between real actors and animated ones don't have to be awkward. Whilst interactions between real and CGI characters weren't anything new, Avatar's approach to crafting one that seemed absolutely seamless and realistic was where it became groundbreaking. According to one effects specialist who worked on the scene where Sully and Neytiri interact as a human and Navi for the first time, an incredible amount of time and effort went into ensuring the interaction felt real. As they told the NY Post, this included considering how much shadow would be cast and how light would be reflected in the scene. Avatar made use of an entirely new lighting system. James Cameron's first movie after the completion of Avatar 5 has been revealed. The Terminator and Titanic director has spent the past decades working on Avatar and its mini-sequels, and is committed to completing the third, fourth, and fifth installments in the lucrative science fiction franchise. The upcoming Avatar, Fire and Ash, is slated for a 2025 release, while Avatar 4 and Avatar 5 are scheduled for 2029 and 2031 as the story of Pandora and the Na'vi continues. According to Deadline, Cameron's first movie after Avatar 5 will be Last Train from Hiroshima. The story is based on Charles Pellegrino's 2015 book of the same name and Pellegrino's upcoming book, Ghosts of Hiroshima, both of which feature eyewitness accounts of Japanese civilians and American pilots who saw the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki during World War II. Cameron's movie will focus on a Japanese man who survives the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, and then boards a train to Nagasaki, only to survive the atomic bomb there as well. Read Cameron's comments about the movie below. It's a subject that I've wanted to do a film about, that I've been wrestling with how to do it, over the years. I met Tsutomu Yamaguchi, a survivor of both Hiroshima and Nagasaki, just days before he died. He was in the hospital. He was handing the baton of his personal story to us. So I have to do it. I can't turn away from it. What this means for James Cameron's future: he has a deeply personal stake in his first post-Avatar movie. While Cameron will remain busy with the Avatar movies for several of years to come, the director has firmly committed to creating Last Train from Hiroshima. This movie's importance transcends Cameron and his creative interests, as after meeting Yamaguchi, Cameron and Pellegrino promised to pass on his unique and harrowing experience to future generations. While Cameron has directed many iconic movies, Last Train from Hiroshima is poised to be one of the most important in his career. Avatar, Fire and Ash, December 19, 2025. Avatar 4, December 21, 2029. Avatar 5, December 19, 2031. With Avatar 5 not releasing until 2031, though, and work still needing to be done on Avatar, Fire and Ash and Avatar 4, Cameron will be unable to be fully committed to Last Train from Hiroshima anytime soon. Between the Avatar sequels and this newly confirmed project, Cameron already has a full slate of movies to direct for the next decade. On top of all these commitments, Cameron previously announced he was also writing a script for Terminator 7, although that movie has not yet been officially greenlit. Our take on James Cameron's first post-Avatar movie: it is a meaningful next step for the director's career. I am thrilled to hear that Cameron is committed to directing another movie after Avatar 5 and am intrigued by it being such a harrowing and important true story. While I enjoyed Avatar, The Way of Water, and will see the sequels, I miss having Cameron direct a wider variety of movies. A movie about a survivor of both atomic bombs is a meaningful story for James Cameron to make, especially given the promise he made to Yamaguchi, and will provide a completely different perspective on this aspect of World War II history than Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Source: Deadline. The Avatar franchise, created by James Cameron, is a groundbreaking sci-fi saga set in the lush, alien world of Pandora. It explores the conflict between the indigenous Na'vi people and human colonizers from Earth, focusing on themes of environmentalism, imperialism, and the clash of civilizations. The franchise is renowned for its innovative use of 3D technology and visual effects, creating a visually stunning and immersive cinematic experience. Avatar, The Way of Water has made $1 billion, £831 meters, at the global box office in just 14 days, becoming the fastest film to pass the milestone this year. The long-delayed sequel has proved a hit with audiences despite wildly varying reviews. It is one of only 3 films to surpass $1 billion this year, after Top Gun, Maverick and Jurassic World Dominion. However, director James Cameron has said his technologically innovative movie needs to make $2 billion to break even. The film picks up after the events of 2009's Avatar, which is the highest-grossing film of all time, with box office receipts of $2.97 billion, £2.47 billion. Analysts say the new installment is unlikely to beat that figure, as cinema attendances are still down, post-pandemic. But based on current performance, the film is likely to overtake Top Gun, Maverick as the biggest film of 2022. That news may come as a surprise to critics, some of whom panned The Way of Water as a lumbering, humorless damp squib of a movie in which nothing meaningful happens and the story is really pretty stupid. Others were more enthusiastic, calling the film an eye-popping, jaw-dropping spectacle and a fully immersive waking dream. The original Avatar was essentially a science fiction version of Pocahontas, following the story of greedy, colonialist humans stripping the resources of a distant planet called Pandora. It was told through the eyes of Jake Sully, Sam Worthington, a human soldier who fell in love with a native warrior called Neytiri, Zoe Saldana, and came to recognize the importance of Pandora's delicately balanced ecosystem. The sequel is set several years later, as Sully and Neytiri head underwater to protect their planet from another human invasion while attempting to raise a family. Sequel's not set in stone. There is a lot riding on its box office performance, as it is the first of 4 planned sequels, with future installments coming in 2024, 2026 and 2028. Cameron shot the third movie in tandem with The Way of Water, as well as a little bit of the fourth to ensure his child actors still looked the right age. I love Stranger Things, but you get the Stranger Things effect where they're supposed to still be in high school, and they look like they're 27, he said. In Avatar 4, the child actors age 6 years in the middle of the story on page 25, he explained, so I needed to shoot everything before then, and then everything after, we'll do later. The director, whose other credits include Terminator, Titanic and The Abyss, has admitted that his plans will be dictated by the film's profitability. The market could be telling us we're done in 3 months, or we might be semi-done, meaning, okay, let's complete the story within movie 3, and not go on endlessly, if it's just not profitable. He told Total Film magazine, "We're in a different world now than we were when I wrote this stuff, even. It's the 1-2 punch, the pandemic and streaming. Or, conversely, maybe we'll remind people what going to the theater is all about." This film definitely does that. As well as topping the global box office chart, The Way of Water is also the UK's #1 film, making £25.03 million in its first 2 weeks of release. You most likely are familiar with master film director and screenwriter James Cameron's previous work, which include The Terminator, 1984, Aliens, 1986, The Abyss, 1989, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, 1991, True Lies, 1994, Titanic, 1997, and now the biggest grossing film of all time, Avatar, 2009. So what should you expect from the Canadian director's latest offering? Avatar, more revolutionary filmmaking, complete with jaw-dropping special effects and grandiose historic themes reflecting more of Cameron's genius. The movie is set in the year 2154 when the RDA Corporation, partnered with a private security military contractor, is mining a moon called Pandora, belonging to the planet Polyphemus in the Alpha Centauri star system. However, living on the moon is the enigmatic nature-loving Na'vi tribe, who also happen to be 10 foot tall with bright blue skin. What follows is 1 hour 41 minutes of the most visually stunning movie entertainment ever witnessed, as Earth's industrialists attempt to subjugate the Na'vi in order to acquire their valuable resources. As the battle plays out, the beautiful alien world and the exotic creatures that live there subsequently arrest our senses, both visually and emotionally, and are the real wonders of this film. Consequently, Avatar is not a movie to be dissected but one to be experienced with the knowledge that the movie-making master James Cameron is back in full force.